Chapter 28:14. The word "scram" showed the ancient heavenly emperor's arrogance and disdain. Since the ancient times, he was the only one who reached this step by relying on cultivation. He didn't submit to anyone but the Flame Emperor. Unfortunately, the Flame Emperor wasn't here, and he was alone. The Hall Master of Class 1 Hall wasn't angry. The ancient heavenly emperor was of the ancient god bloodline. If he encountered Yi Qing Han or the Yen clan, he would still attack. It was an inheritance that came from his bones. Chu Su's initial imprint of the former Taigu emperor radiated a destructive light. The destruction spear in his hand exploded with a powerful killing intent. He also had the will to fight. The ancient heavenly emperor was indeed powerful, and it stimulated his pride. However, the ancient heavenly emperor wasn't an ordinary person. He wasn't someone who could be trampled on. Once he failed, he would die. However, he was born because of Yi Qing Han. He couldn't let this matter spoil his true goal. Although the ancient heavenly emperor was strong, he wasn't arrogant enough to fight against the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall and Chu Su, the two Super Taigu emperors. "I won't keep you company. I'm leaving." Whoosh! The ancient heavenly emperor soared into the sky and spread his divine sense. He quickly found Luo Wuhan, Gu Jiutian, and the others. Chu Su and the former Taigu emperor and the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall stood proudly on the mountain peak. This ancient heavenly emperor was the first ancient god and ancient immortal to lose control. "How should we deal with this person?" the former Taigu emperor Chu Su asked coldly. The Hall Master of Class 1 Hall asked indifferently, "Can you kill him?" Chu Su shook his head. He didn't have the confidence to win. In fact, the chances of him losing were very high. His ability was to destroy Yi Qing Han, not the ancient heavenly emperor. His initial imprint couldn't destroy the ancient heavenly emperor. "Then we'll take our time. After 10,000 years, when the seal is broken, everything will be clear," the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall said indifferently. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! The Hall Master of Class 1 Hall and Chu Su left the place at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, they were countless miles away. In the distant ancient immortal realm, the ancient heavenly emperor had settled Gu Jiutian and the others down in a dense forest. Then, he gave them special instructions. "From now on, if you run into Class 1 Hall, do not engage in direct conflict with them. However, you don't have to listen to their orders either. The war has yet to begin, and the best part is yet to come." "Father, where are you going?" Gu Jiutian asked when he saw that the ancient heavenly emperor was about to leave. The ancient celestial the Arch took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Go to a place where no human has ever been and refine an immemorial master divine weapon. Primal Chaos Heavenly Domain." The ancient heavenly emperor had been summoned by the Chaos Celestial Domain. Although he had not been born there, he had been born as a primordial master god. Although he could not obtain the heavenly medicine, he was qualified to obtain a primordial master god weapon. The order of things was slowly changing. The ancient immortal world had suddenly emerged with the addition of the ancient celestial emperor. His attitude was unclear. Perhaps it would bring luck to Yi Qing Han, but it could also bring about complete destruction. At this moment, Yi Qing Han, who was in the undying immortal realm, had no idea what had happened in the ancient immortal realm. However, he knew what had happened to him. The death aura that Chu Su had caused seemed to be specifically targeted at him. Once he was infected by the aura of death, it would be very difficult for the anti-order laws to eliminate him. Yi Qing Han sat cross-legged in the herb field, absorbing the spiritual energy of the herb field, absorbing the power of heaven and earth, and devouring the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers. His entire body was bathed in light. It took him decades to get rid of the aura of death. Hiss! Whoosh! Yi Qing Han took a deep breath and expelled the turbid aura. He slowly opened his eyes and took off his mask. His face was pale. This person's power is truly terrifying. But the Chaos Heavenly Realm is even scarier. I only went there and the Chaos Heavenly Realm already gave birth to an existence that specifically countered me. Its operation of laws and order has reached the peak. If I can't control the star, it will be very difficult for me to defeat the Chaos Heavenly Realm. Yi Qinghan thought to himself and shook his head. Without power, he would not be able to protect the star. Without the star's support, he would not have enough power to deal with the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall and the former Taigu Emperor, Chu Su. Will that heavenly medicine be my destiny? Yi Qinghan slowly stood up and walked towards the heaven-suppressing prefecture district with the dragon tiger mask in hand. At this moment, countless experts had gathered in the heaven-suppressing prefecture's district. The 100 new disciples of Class 1 Hall were sitting alone in the heaven-suppressing prefecture's plaza, accompanied by Yi Tong, Lin Mo, and the others. No one knew what to do with these 100 supreme experts. 36 ancient gods and ancient immortals, the rest were natives of the immortal world. Their strength was definitely not weak. With 20 to 30 of them working together, they could easily suppress anyone from Crazed Manor, including Yi Qinghan. It would be a waste to kill them, but they would not feel at ease if they did not kill them. Especially the ancient gods and ancient immortals, if they were killed, the natives' hearts would turn cold. If they were not killed, they would not know what to do with them. Crazed Manor's priority was to appease them, providing them with resources and accommodations. Everything would have to wait until Yi Qinghan woke up. With Yi Tong, Lin Mo, and the others living together, these people were confident that Crazed Manor would not mistreat them. This also made the new generation of natives of the immortal world feel at ease. At this moment, Void God Yi and Lin Shukong both wanted to talk to their son, even if it was just a look. However, they did not have the chance to do so. However, Crazed Manor's older generation was also in pain. Crazed Manor had sent out so many children and now, only 12 returned. It was a great loss. After spending more than 30 years, Yan Yunbei finally recovered from his injuries. Before he had the time to tell his brothers about the death of his child, he handed over all the memories about the heaven-shocking staff that he had stored to Qitian Monkey King and instructed him personally. One had to admit that Yan Yunbei's talent in cultivating the staff was far inferior to Qitian Monkey King. The heaven-shocking staff in Qitian Monkey King's hands was comparable to Qitian monarchs. It was even more domineering. With the cultivation experience and Yan Yunbei's guidance, Qitian Monkey King improved tremendously. Towards the end, the immortal world's laws and principles could no longer withstand Qitian Monkey King's attacks. Qitian Monkey King had no choice but to rush into the depths of the galaxy and cultivate on a dead star. On this day, Yi Qinghan stepped into the heaven-suppressing Manor's district. Looking at the group of young natives and Crazed Manor's people, he couldn't help but sigh. Last time, it was hard to tell who would have won otherwise. From what happened last time, Yi Qinghan could tell that trust was often the most important thing. If the Dao Patrol trusted them, they would never betray them. After 30 to 40,000 years of cultivation, their faith crumbled and the backlash was unimaginable. Hua! Seeing Yi Qinghan's arrival, the crowd stood up. Yi Qinghan looked at the crowd and said with a hoarse voice, "Everyone, there's no need to restrain yourselves. Since you've come to my Crazed Manor, I will treat you as a direct descendant. You are of the same generation as Yi Tong and are also his friends. Since you're here, I will give you an explanation." The natives all bowed and said, "Thank you, Clan Master Yi." For many years, their goal was to defeat Yi Qinghan and kill Crazed Manor's experts. But now, they were all under Crazed Manor's banner. They felt that something was amiss. Yi Qinghan looked at the 30-plus ancient gods and ancient immortals. These people were the most difficult to deal with. Chapter 28:15. The ancient gods and ancient immortals didn't have much hatred for the crazy manor. It was all instilled by the elite hall. However, their hatred for the Yen clan was real. Even though their bloodline hadn't undergone atavism, there was still hatred. Even Yen Ao, Yi Qinqing, and Hualing Tian had great hatred for them. Yi Qinghan looked at this group of young ancient gods and ancient immortals. They were also helpless at this moment. Class 1 Hall didn't believe them and Crazy Manor might not accept them. This was a group of people that no one cared about. Their bloodline wasn't pure and they didn't have the strength of an immemorial emperor. Even if they had supreme battle prowess like Yi Tong and Lin Mo, they wouldn't have fallen to such a state. The ancient gods and ancient immortals looked at Yi Qinghan and lowered their heads. "There's no need to worry," Yi Qinghan said. "The reason the ancient gods and immortals hate the Ifrit is because the laws and principles of order in their godhoods have changed them. There's no problem. Let me study it for a few days, and I'll give you an answer. As for the others, there's no need to worry. The natives of the deathless immortal plane are the same as us." Who? The natives couldn't help but exhale. They were too different from the ancient gods and ancient immortals. Class 1 Hall didn't want them, and if Crazed Manor didn't accept them, they wouldn't even have a place to go. They would have to go to the depths of the universe and find a planet with life to live out the rest of their lives. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and took out the primordial godhood he had obtained in the past. These were all primordial godhoods filled with laws and principles of order. Different patterns represented different laws and principles of order, and different laws and principles of order naturally had different uses. Yi Qinghan stared at the godhood for a long time before returning to Sky-Gazing Peak. He took the godhood and carefully studied it. If he could find the laws and principles of order related to the hatred for the Yen clan, then everything would be easily solved. However, godhood was no ordinary item. It contained the laws and principles of time and order, and was extremely mysterious. And this was just an ordinary godhood. If it were a sovereign godhood, Yi Qinghan wouldn't necessarily be able to figure it out even if he spent tens of thousands of years studying it. If he could study a sovereign godhood, he would have the battle prowess of a primeval godlord, and if he wanted to recreate one, it would be as simple as flipping his hand. Yi Qinghan held the quintessence in his hand and fell into deep thought. He constantly used his power to stimulate the veins and patterns within the quintessence, trying to figure out the function of these veins and patterns. Occasionally, he would use the anti-order laws to sever certain veins and patterns. As a result, the entire quintessence was crippled. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan threw away the ruined godhead and took out a new one to continue his research. This was a slow process that consumed a lot of time. However, there was no other way. Since it involved 100 Supremes, Yi Qinghan naturally wanted them to stay behind and fight for Kuang Fu. At this moment, Yan Yunbei and Qitian Monkey King were fighting on a dead star. They had been cultivating bitterly for many years, and Qitian Monkey King had caught up with him. With the Emperor's staff art, he was able to shatter a dead star with a single strike. It was extremely domineering. The two fought thousands of times. In the first 500 times, Yan Yunbei defeated Qitian Monkey King as if he was crushing dry weeds. However, as the number of times increased, Qitian Monkey King began to counterattack effectively. He went from being completely defeated to being slightly inferior. After 1,000 times, Qitian Monkey King was only slightly inferior. On this day, Qitian Monkey King wielded his golden staff and fought against Yan Yunbei once again. Yan Yunbei wielded his startling sky staff. Even though he had yet to awaken it, he still had the upper hand. He fought with Qitian Monkey King for a long time, but they were actually neck and neck. 1,000 years of cultivation passed in the blink of an eye. Qitian Monkey King kept on fighting despite repeated defeats. He didn't know fatigue and was attracted by the Emperor's staff art. After every battle, he would return to the sovereign space to absorb his gains and stabilize his cultivation base. As time passed, his battle prowess increased. When he unleashed the Emperor's staff art to the extreme, he actually gained the approval of the Emperor's staff art. Whoosh! The emperor's staff soared into the sky and spun at high speed. It released the emperor's technique and pressure. Golden light covered the entire universe. From today onwards, you will be the master and I will be the soldier. Let's kill the hall master of the first-class hall, Chu Jun. The emperor's staff roared. The emperor's staff art was furious. After being suppressed for 1,000 years, he finally found the person he wanted to wield the staff. Although Yan Yunbei was talented, he didn't like to wield the staff. Therefore, although he used the emperor's staff art, he didn't approve of it. Now that he approved of Qitian Monkey King, he only wanted to take revenge. Qitian Monkey King revealed his true form. His hair was golden. He waved his hand and wanted to be on par with the heavens. Boom! The emperor's staff art landed in his hand. His aura was changing. He was only one realm away from the Taigu Emperor. Sooner or later, he would break through the shackles and surpass the emperor's staff art. The heaven and earth trembled, and the melody rumbled. The heavens equal Monkey King soared into the sky and seized the void. His staff cleaved the universe and shattered the dome. His staff cleaved a huge star. Its power had completely surpassed the effect of the emperor's startling sky rod in Yan Yunbei's hands. Yan Yunbei smiled. He wasn't good at the emperor's staff art and he didn't care about it. No matter how strong it wasn't what he wanted. The art of piercing Tao was his foundation. Hua! Yan Yunbei disappeared. Even when Qitian Monkey King turned around, he couldn't see him. The art of piercing Tao slashed across Qitian Monkey King's neck. The cold air entered Qitian Monkey King's body and shocked him. Ha ha ha. You still need more training. I'm leaving. Xiao.Hua. Yan Yunbei laughed and even mocked Qitian Monkey King before he left. Qitian Monkey King laughed and swung his staff at the void, smashing Yan Yunbei out of the alternate dimension and shattering the galaxy. Xiao xiao xiao. Yan Yunbei flew across the void ridge and headed straight for the heaven-suppressing palace. Qitian Monkey King had also returned. It was time for him to settle down after all the hard work he had put into cultivating the 8th level, and the 9th level's abstrusity had also entered his psyche ocean. All he needed to do was to unleash his power and step into the 8th level, touching the Taigu Emperor level. At the same time, Yi Qinghan was still at the sky-gazing mountain. He had spent 1,000 years studying the art of piercing Tao and had spent a few hundred of his godheads. Boom! Suddenly, an aura burst into the sky and Yi Qinghan appeared outside of the heaven-suppressing palace. I did it! I did it! Yi Qinghan shouted excitedly. Not only did he figure out how to stop the hatred, he also understood how the ancient gods and ancient immortals worked. Now, killing the ancient gods would be a piece of cake for him. The ancient gods and ancient immortals worked in the same way. The hatred came from the soul and was passed down to the bloodline. As long as he changed a part of the soul, he could also stop the ancient immortals' hatred towards the Yen clan. The ancient immortals' souls were almost the same as the ancient gods' godheads. After all, they both originated from the chaotic heavenly realm. The group of young paragons were overjoyed and they all stood up. The 1,000 years had been too hard for them to bear. All ancient gods and ancient immortals, come to my side. This time, you have to trust me completely. Soon, I will be able to change the order of your godheads and souls. I definitely won't harm you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have wasted so much of my time researching for 1,000 years, Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice. Yes, sir. The crowd bowed. They had no choice but to trust Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan pressed his hand on the head of an ancient god and his psyche penetrated the ancient god's psyche ocean. The anti-order energy almost penetrated the ancient god's defense and entered the psyche ocean, attaching itself to the godhead. Chapter 28:16. The first step of changing the order of the divinity was the most dangerous, as this was the first experiment. But Yi Qinhan did not disappoint them. After spending hundreds of divinity and 1,000 years of research, there was no way he would make a mistake. The 17 ancient gods' divinity took Yi Qinhan a few hours to change the order of the divinity. With the seeds of hatred severed, when they looked at the Yen clan again, their hatred was gone and they even had a good impression of the Yen clan. The only ones left were the ancient immortals. Ancient immortals also had the order of hatred within their souls. Yi Qinhan used an entire day to change the dharma and logos of the order of hatred. He was so nervous that he was drenched in sweat. A single mistake would have caused a huge problem. With one dead, the others did not dare to ask Yi Qinhan to sever the order of hatred. Fortunately, the 30 or so young lords were all fine. Who? Yi Qinhan breathed out a mouthful of turbid air and wiped the sweat off his forehead. Hua hua hua. Clap clap clap. The heaven-suppressing palace's plaza was filled with applause. This was a joyous occasion, especially for the ancient immortals and ancient gods. They finally felt a sense of belonging and they all knelt down to thank Yi Qinhan. Yi Qinhan helped them up, and just when he was about to leave, the master of the district came. The master of the district was showing signs of atavism. She could no longer suppress the hatred in her and she had no choice but to ask Yi Qinhan to change the order. However, her soul was stronger than the young lords and the order was more complicated. It was almost impossible to sever the genes of hatred. But she still took the risk and asked Yi Qinhan to help her. The workshop's main cultivation method was the astral river reversal. Yi Qinhan understood it the best, because he also cultivated the astral river reversal. His soul was tangled and complicated, like the roots of an old tree. It was very difficult to find the order of hatred. Yi Qinhan frowned and pondered for a long time. He said softly, "Aunt, think carefully. Your soul is different from the others. If you show signs of atavism again, I am not very confident. If you fail, you will go mad or even be crippled." The owner frowned as he looked at Yi Qinhan. He took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "I don't want to be your enemy. Give it a try. If I become crippled or go crazy, kill me." Yi Qinhan clenched his fists nervously. He pondered for a long time, but still could not make up his mind. After a long time, the owner said firmly, "I'm not even afraid of death. What are you afraid of?" Yi Qinhan smiled bitterly. What was he afraid of? This number one beauty of the celestial nation wasn't afraid of death, but he didn't want to destroy her. At this moment, Emperor Taihao walked over and bowed slightly. "Yi Zi, give her a hand. I won't blame you if anything happens." Yi Qinhan nodded and said seriously, "Follow me to Sky-Gazing Peak." The owner did not hesitate and immediately rushed to Sky-Gazing Peak. "If Auntie and I don't come out of seclusion, no one is allowed to disturb us." Yi Qinhan looked at the people from Quang Manor and reminded them. At this moment, Yun Rui stepped forward and said, "This general will personally guard the northern Divine Island. I won't let anyone enter Sky-Gazing Peak." Yi Qinhan nodded. Although Yun Rui was a native, he was loyal to Quang Manor. His son, Yun Yang, had also participated in the expedition to the ancient immortal world. Now that he had returned, it could be considered a great contribution. "Thank you for your hard work," Yi Qinhan said and pulled the owner up into the clouds. In the blink of an eye, they crossed the sea and arrived at the northern Divine Island. On Sky-Gazing Peak. Whoosh! The two of them used stellar transposition and landed directly. Slap, slap, Yi Qinhan struck the owner's vital acupoints, sealing off all of her energy to prevent her from attacking him. The owner did not resist and trusted Yi Qinhan unconditionally. "Anti-workshop owner, please take a seat. I might have to enter your soul, and I'll be able to see all your thoughts. You'll have to cooperate with me to observe the order of your soul," Yi Qinhan said in a low voice. The owner's face reddened slightly. After a moment of silence, she nodded resolutely. Only she understood the owner's thoughts. She had long submitted to Yi Qinghan. Ever since the battle between Yi Qinghan and the Dao patrol, she had completely fallen. The moment Yi Qinghan entered the owner's consciousness, his huge soul wrapped around the owner's soul and fused with her. Their souls were each stronger than the last. The soul seemed ethereal, but the order it contained was boundless. It was comparable to a universe. Especially at the owner's level, it was comparable to the order of a mid-tier plane. Yi Qinghan noticed the owner's thoughts and his heart trembled. A beauty like her was the number one existence in the entire celestial nation. It was impossible for men not to be moved. Even if it wasn't love, it would be desire. However, Yi Qinghan quickly calmed down. Their souls were as one. It was like two people facing each other openly without any secrets. It was similar to the fusion of yin and yang. Their souls were tightly entwined. The complex soul order was boundless. Yi Qinghan explored it bit by bit. The owner's soul was different from the souls of the ancient gods and immortals. Her soul was like the Milky Way universe, sparkling with starlight. It contained the boundless Milky Way Tao. Her Milky Way inverse space had already reached the peak. If she improved further, she would be able to withstand hundreds of attacks from the Taigu Emperor. Even if she lost, she would still be the number one existence below the Yen Emperor. If Yi Qinghan's soul wasn't strong enough, he would probably be lost in her soul and become a part of it. After 100 years, Yi Qinghan still couldn't find the owner's hatred order. Yi Qinghan was exhausted. On the other hand, the owner's soul was stronger. He had no choice but to withdraw from the owner's soul. The two looked at each other. Yi Qinghan could only shake his head. Her soul was too complete and huge. Changing the order of her soul was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Yi. The owner struggled for a long time. Then, she took the initiative to say, "Let's do it. When our souls truly become one, there definitely won't be any accidents." The owner hadn't even touched a man until now. Now that she took the initiative to propose dual cultivation, it was clear to see how far she had fallen. Yi Qinghan admitted that he was a beast in human clothing. However, he wasn't a beast to the point where he would push Qinyan's aunt away. Yi Qinghan hesitated. He didn't want to give up on the owner's combat strength, but he also wanted to cut off the seed of hatred in her. Furthermore, he didn't want to give up on Qinyan. It was rare to have both in the world. "Are you worried about Qinyan?" The owner's face was already red. She took the initiative to bring it up. Seeing Yi Qinghan's expression, she was still prepared to refuse. Yi Qinghan nodded. In order to become stronger, Xianyuan Qinyan was already in a state of near insanity. She was a bit like Shirgu. Yi Qinghan really didn't want to hurt her. "Let's go find her," the owner said resolutely. Yi Qinghan just happened to want to persuade Xianyuan Qinyan as well. He immediately nodded and said, "Aunt, help persuade her later. Tell her not to be so stubborn. I will change the order of her soul." Whoosh! Yi Qinghan brought the owner back to the capital of the Qing Zun Immortal Empire. It was now a prefecture with a special administrative government. Xianyuan Hongchen was in charge of it. The Quang prefecture almost didn't participate in any political affairs here. They were given a high degree of autonomy just to repay the favor of the Qing Zun Immortal Empire. 1 hour later, Yi Qinghan arrived at the capital from the sky-gazing peak of the northern Divine Island. The stars shifted as he entered the inner city, Princess Xianyuan Qinyan's residence. Now, there were only a few maids and a few poor children taking care of the residence. This place was already a forbidden area in the entire capital. No one dared to come here because Qinyan had completely gone insane. Her cultivation had reached the point of madness. Her aura could soar into the galaxy, and her pressure could destroy the vitality of the surrounding residents. Qingyun's atavism was even more terrifying than the owner's atavism. She wanted atavism to become stronger, but she didn't want to hurt Yi Qinghan. Unfortunately, she couldn't have her cake and eat it too. As a result, her soul was torn apart, and she had two personalities. Once she entered the atavism state, her combat strength would be extraordinary. However, if she wanted to return to the personality that protected Yi Qinghan, her combat strength would be greatly reduced. Chapter 28:17. Even Xianyuan Hongchen was unable to suppress such a deranged Qingyun. Yi Qinghan and the owner pushed open the door and entered. The princess residence was now overgrown with weeds and fallen leaves, making it look like an ancient palace that had been abandoned for a long time. Asterisk woo woo woo, asterisk a cold wind blew past, causing the fallen leaves to dance. It was as though this place was a haunted house as a gloomy aura filled the air. Yi Qinghan frowned. He did not expect Xianyuan Qingyun to actually degrade herself to such an extent. Sigh, the owner sighed softly and whispered, "Back then, His Majesty definitely did not expect you to reach such a stage, nor did he expect Qingyun to force herself into atavism." Yi Qinghan sighed as well. With a wave of his hand, he undid the owner's seal and stepped into the inner hall with her. Inner hall, sleeping quarters. A beautiful woman was combing her hair and looking at herself in the mirror. She would occasionally smile while her eyes would emit a cold glint. Her personality was completely extreme. When she smiled, it made one's heart ache involuntarily, but when her ferocious glint flashed, it made one shudder. Xianyuan Qingyun had truly gone mad. She was the only one who had driven herself mad during cultivation. Even Shirgu would not be so crazy. As long as her willpower was not firm enough, her soul would not be able to withstand such great pressure. Asterisk creak, asterisk the door to the sleeping quarters was pushed open. Xianyuan Qingyun turned her pale face. When she saw the owner and Yi Qinghan, she was overjoyed and immediately charged over. However, just as she approached Yi Qinghan, she could actually sense Yi Qinghan's anti-order dharma and logos. Killing intent even surged from the bottom of her heart. This hostility did not come from her bloodline but from the depths of her soul. Her figure flashed and the sword in her sleeve appeared out of thin air. The cold glint shattered the profound wood door and ruthlessly sliced towards Yi Qinghan's throat. Asterisk whoosh. Asterisk Yi Qinghan was caught off guard and reached out to grab the sword. However, the sword aura actually tore through his defenses and dyed the sword red. Asterisk thud thud thud, asterisk Yi Qinghan took several steps back as he looked at Xianyuan Qingyun in shock. Qingyun! Yi Qinghan bellowed, trying to wake her up. However, her blood and qi had already undergone atavism. The density of her ancestral blood far exceeded that of the workshop owner. Furthermore, the workshop owner's soul and will were strong enough to control himself, but she could not. Whoosh! Xianyuan Qingyun shone with an ominous glint, covering Yi Qinghan. The power in her body surged, and she directly pulled out the sharp sword in Yi Qinghan's hand. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Xianyuan Qingyun stabbed out several hundred times in succession, and each strike seized the soul, causing it to be extremely shocking. Die! Xianyuan Qingyun's voice suddenly changed, and it was now filled with dense killing intent. The qi and blood in her body were already completely on par with a second-generation ancient immortal. Boom! Yi Qinghan continuously blocked the sharp sword, leveling the entire princess manor. In order not to harm the living beings in the city, he rose into the air and disappeared into the void in the blink of an eye. Roar! Whoosh! Xianyuan Qingyun's speed was as fast as lightning. Her sword pierced through the sky, and she actually chased after Yi Qinghan. Logically speaking, Xianyuan Qingyun's ancestor might not have such battle prowess. However, a madwoman was only half a step away from a genius. She displayed the power of her ancestor and actually forced Yi Qinghan to retreat. It was very easy for Yi Qinghan to kill Xianyuan Qinyan, but could he? Clearly, he could not. Yi Qinghan's hands were tied. He was afraid of hurting Xianyuan Qinyan, but he did not want her to be so crazy. He could only stall for time and look for an opportunity. However, Xianyuan Qinyan's current sword technique had almost reached the grand perfection stage. Boom! Xianyuan Qinyan seemed to have gone crazy. The closer she got to Yi Qinghan, the more violent she became. The sword in her hand had already transformed into a lightning dragon that exploded in the void. The entire Qingzuan immortal kingdom could see it clearly. Roar! Whoosh! The master soared into the sky. With a wave of his hand, he controlled the river of stars. All laws went against the sky, and 1,000,000,000,000 stars appeared out of nowhere. They gathered behind him into a giant hand that blotted out the sky and directly turned toward Xianyuan Qinyan. Yi Qinghan attracted her attention from the front. Xianyuan Qinyan did not expect the master to attack from behind. Her entire body was grabbed by the illusory hand that blotted out the sky. No matter how she struggled, she could not escape being suppressed. Boom! Whoosh! The master was suppressed on the ground, and his sword was seized by Yi Qinghan. Xianyuan Qinyan's frantic struggle was no different from a madwoman's. She was even more ferocious when she could only sense the anti-order principles in Yi Qinghan's body, but could not see Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan frowned. He no longer had the aura of the Yan clan. Why did Xianyuan Qinyan want to kill him so crazily? Has she really gone crazy, or has her love turned into hatred? Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. He found it inconceivable that Xianyuan Qinyan would have such a reaction upon seeing him. The master continuously struck Xianyuan Qinyan's by Gu acupoint. When his divine sense came into contact with her soul, he could not help but shake his head gravely. It's not because of her bloodline. Instead, it's because her soul has come into contact with the primordial origin after falling into madness. When a person goes crazy, it's easiest to come into contact with the primordial origin. You cultivate the anti-order principles, which is also the power of the primordial origin. That's why she attacked you. Who? Yi Qinghan let out a breath of turbid air and shook his head helplessly. Severing Xianyuan Qinyan's connection with the primordial origin would consume an even greater amount of energy. Xianyuan Qinyan had fallen into a deep sleep. The sword in her hand had already fallen off. She was actually so beautiful when she was quiet. Yi Qinghan felt rather sorry for this fool. The heavens were toying with people. Because he had the bloodline of the Yan clan, she had the bloodline of the ancient immortals. Now that he cultivated the anti-order principles, she had come into contact with the primordial origin. Are you the unlucky one, or am I the unlucky one? Yi Qinghan hugged Xianyuan Qinyan and lowered his head to look at her tired and haggard face as he muttered helplessly. Whoosh! Whoosh! Yi Qinghan brought Xianyuan Qinyan into the dilapidated princess residence. There were already very few rooms that were undamaged. They could only turn around and step into the palace. Xianyuan Hongchen had arranged a special courtyard house for them. Yi Qinghan brought Xianyuan Qinyan and the owner of the courtyard house into the courtyard house. Then, he set up a grand array so that no one could enter. I'll repair her soul first before severing her connection with the primordial origin. Otherwise, she'll go crazy again, Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice. The owner of the courtyard house nodded and left the hall. He sat in the courtyard house and slowly waited. Yi Qinghan placed Xianyuan Qinyan on the bed in a side room. His divine sense entered Xianyuan Qinyan's sea of consciousness and discovered that her soul wasn't just in chaos. It was simply in a complete mess without any order to speak of. However, it was precisely because there was no order principles that it was closer to the primordial origin. It's too chaotic. It seems we can only dual cultivate. Yi Qinghan shook his head helplessly. He laid Xianyuan Qingyun down and slowly took off her outer clothes. Her skin was sparkling and translucent, flowing with a treasured light. It was beautiful and moving. Her skin was like water. In the end, Xianyuan Qingyun was still one of Yi Qinghan's wives. He did not have too many misgivings. He quickly took off her clothes and lifted his spear for battle. Their souls intertwined, and the scattered soul quickly returned to its original position under Yi Qinghan's guidance. Xianyuan Qingyun constantly groaned and panted in her unconscious state. Yi Qinghan seemed to have forgotten to set up a soundproofing array. The owner of the courtyard house, who was sitting in the courtyard house, was as red as an apple. At this moment, she was restless and pacing back and forth. She did not know whether to leave or stay. She glanced at the bedroom house several times and had the urge to rush in. The owner of the courtyard house no longer felt any hostility towards Yi Qinghan. However, she still felt an involuntary hostility and killing intent towards Yan Ao and the other members of the insane manor. She wanted to sever the order of hatred. She did not want to become enemies with the insane manor or Yi Qinghan. Whoosh! The owner of the courtyard house suddenly made up her mind and slowly walked towards Yi Qinghan's room. Chapter 28:18. Yi Qinghan was galloping on horseback, but his soul was not idle. It merged with Xianyuan Qingyun's soul, helping her to straighten out the order of her soul. When their souls became one, the chaos could be sorted out. At this moment, the owner pushed open the door and entered. She saw Yi Qinghan galloping on horseback. Although Xianyuan Qingyun had yet to awaken, her soul was slowly being straightened out. She could not help but moan softly. It was like the sound of nature reverberating in the room. She could not help but lower her head, but the impulse in her bones made her very excited. Whoosh! The owner entered and walked to the edge of the bed. Yi Qinghan was currently wholeheartedly helping Xianyuan Qingyun to recover, so he did not notice the owner at all. At this moment, he was galloping on horseback unconsciously, so there was not much of an impact. The owner took off her jacket and bent her straight jade legs slightly as she knelt on the edge of the bed. After several months of struggle, Xianyuan Qingyun, Yi Qinghan, and the owner stepped out of the courtyard house together. Even now, the owner's face was still red. Xianyuan Qingyun was even more embarrassed. She had never imagined that there would be a day when she would lie on the same bed as the owner's aunt to serve a man. Yi Qinghan pretended to be serious. In order to restrain his expression of wanting to laugh, he directly put on the mask. He could no longer hold it in. His vulgar smile was definitely not inferior to sovereign Yes and elegant Yes. His body trembled. Xianyuan Qingyun looked curiously at Yi Qinghan and asked in a crisp voice, "Husband, what's wrong with you?" Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and said solemnly, "I'm tired. I'm really tired." The owner looked at Yi Qinghan's mask as if she could see through his expression. After all, his gaze was too strange. She probably guessed that Yi Qinghan was smiling vulgarly, so she reached out and slapped the back of Yi Qinghan's head. Slap. The owner angrily said, "What's so funny? What's so funny? Could it be that you want me to kill Yan Ao, Huo Lingtian and Yi Qingqing? Do you know that I didn't dare to get close to them all these years when you weren't around? I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to control myself and would kill them." Yi Qinghan did not get angry after being slapped. Instead, he reached out and held the proud owner in his arms. His big hand was unable to hold her pride. Humph, only then did Xianyuan Qingyun react. It turned out that Yi Qinghan was still pretending to be innocent after getting what he wanted, and was secretly laughing. She reached out, wanting to draw her sword and hack this heartless man to death. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan fled, not giving the two of them a chance to join forces. In the heaven-suppressing prefecture, everyone had come out from their closed-door cultivation. Due to the lack of resources and the laws of order, many of them had reached the peak of perfection. But they still couldn't break through the layer of order and reach the level of Dao Patrol. Even Qi Tian Monkey King couldn't reach the level of Jing Tian Monarch. Everyone could only wait passively. On this day, Quang Manor and the others had a gathering in the Heaven-Suppressing Prefecture's district. The elites of Quang Manor were present, and even the new generation of Elite Hall's Supremes were present. Now that they had joined Quang Manor, the treatment they received in Quang Manor was on a completely different level compared to the treatment they received in Elite Hall. This wasn't a matter of resources, but the most basic respect. Quang Manor would ask for their opinion before doing anything. In Elite Hall, it was purely an order. If they didn't do well, they would be scolded, punished, or even beaten. And now, this group of Supremes was still led by Lin Mo and Yi Tong. They were reorganized into a new team, no longer the Heaven Supremes of Heaven, but the Quang Manor Supreme Dao Assassin Army. Quang Manor had the Ancient Massacre God, the Inner Sect, Outer Sect, Heaven Conquering Camp, and the Supreme Dao Assassin Army. The Supreme Dao Assassin Army didn't only consist of 100 people. The third generation of Quang Manor's experts, as well as the natives of the immortal world, were all recruited into the army. The leaders were Yi Tong, Lin Mo, Yun Yang, Li Mo, Jiang Qiufeng, and the others. The one in charge of training them was Yan Yunbei. There were a total of 1,030 people, and only 360 of them would be selected to become internal members of the Supreme Assassins Legion. They would be responsible for assassinations and intelligence gathering. It was a very dangerous organization, but there were plenty of people who were willing to do anything to get in. These young Supremes were familiar with the ancient immortal world. Secondly, they were strong in battle. Thirdly, they were the direct subordinates of Quang Manor. Their status was on par with the Ancient Massacre God and the Inner Sect. The Outer Sect was on par with them, and their individual combat strength was the strongest outside of the older generation. Here, they would be fully nurtured by Quang Manor. Today's banquet was to discuss the Supreme Dao Assassin Army. The 100 experts from Class 1 Hall's new generation did not expect to become Crazed Manor's direct subordinates. At that moment, they were filled with excitement. They had thought that they would become prisoners after joining Crazed Manor, but the outcome was completely different from what they had imagined. At that moment, they were so excited that their faces turned red. Yan Yunbei raised his cup and said to the experts of the Supreme Dao Assassin Army, "You are the most outstanding of the 3 Supremes of Quang Manor. Remember, once you join this army, your life doesn't belong to you. It belongs to your teammates. Quang Manor only has one requirement: never betray, never give up, and never abandon. If you are abandoned by Class 1 Hall, Quang Manor will do its best to nurture you. I have never doubted your cultivation base, but from today onward, I will let you enter a realm you have never entered before. The Tao of Assassins, the Tao of Assassins." "Many thanks, Elder Yen." Yi Tong and the others raised their cups and bowed respectfully. The other members of the Supreme Dao Assassin Army were even more excited. Today, they had been officially acknowledged by Quang Manor and were willing to pledge their loyalty to them. Without comparison, there would be no harm. Quang Manor was only able to recruit them because of the inhumane treatment they had received in Class 1 Hall. Even though they were Supremes of the same level, they were still treated like dogs. They were the most lowly existences in Class 1 Hall. No need to thank me. Now, I will announce the members of the Assassin Army. Aside from Yi Tong and Lin Mo, everyone who returned from the ancient immortal world will be a leader. Remember, as a leader, you must live up to your position and your brothers." Yan Yunbei said solemnly. The ancient gods and ancient immortals were stunned. They hadn't expected that becoming a direct subordinate wasn't the end. They were going to become a leader as well. Men die for those who understand them, and women die for those who love them. We pledge our loyalty to Quang Manor. The 30-something ancient gods and ancient immortals took the initiative to get down on one knee. We pledge our loyalty to Quang Manor. As long as we are alive, we will not allow our team to be destroyed. The 60-something experts followed suit and got down on one knee. Whoosh! With a wave of his hand, Yan Yunbei lifted them up and said calmly, Kuang Manor, you may only be the third generation, but you are equal to us. You may bow to your seniors, but there is no need to kneel now. These people were completely convinced. Kuang Manor's rules were something many dreamed of. The people brought back by Yi Tong and Lin Mo slowly regained their dignity and glory. At this moment, Yi Qinghan escaped back to the heaven-suppressing palace. However, the district master and Xianyuan Qingyun had already arrived. Jian Qinxue and Ren Huangyi smiled and stood up to welcome him. As the two were the main wives, Xianyuan Qingyun didn't dare to behave atrociously in front of the two ladies. She immediately bowed and said, Qingyun greets the two sisters. Jian Qinxue waved her hand and helped Xianyuan Qingyun up. She gave Xianyuan Qingyun immense pressure. This was the aura of a main wife. At this moment, even the district master didn't dare to act rashly despite her heaven-defying cultivation base that was even stronger than Jian Qinxue. We are all sisters, there is no need to be so formal. Jian Qinxue said crisply, sit down, let's discuss the construction of the assassin army. Chapter 28:19. The words "we are all sisters" fully expressed Jian Qinshue's magnanimity. However, Emperor Yi pursed his lips and glared at Yi Qinghan. Because she had sharp eyes, she noticed that the owner's expression was a little different. She seemed to want to greet her again but was a little embarrassed. Jian Qinxue was dressed in a snow-white robe, looking graceful and gorgeous. She glanced at the owner and knew that her cultivation and status were far from ordinary. It was normal for her to be embarrassed. She took the initiative to hold the owner's hand and said with a smile, the Kuang Manor is a family. Elder sister, you don't have to be shy. I am not an insensible person. With elder sister, son, and Qinglian accompanying lord husband in battle, I, as a weak woman, can also take care of the trivial matters of the celestial nation without worry. Jian Qinxue spent most of her time with the Wang clan and Yimengshi. Later on, she participated in political affairs but had never fought on the battlefield. It was not an exaggeration to say that her hands were not stained with blood. However, if one really thought of her as a weak woman, then they would be blind. Jian Qinxue spoke appropriately. She gave face to the owner and also warned her that she had the final say in the inner palace. Jian Qinxue must not think of using strength to suppress the other sisters. At the same time, she also tactfully told everyone that the owner's status had been confirmed. The owner smiled. When it came to dealing with people, she preferred to deal with smart women like Jian Qinxue. Emperor Yi was too immature. No matter how strong she was or how high her status was in the inner sect, she was still too narrow-minded and possessive. Thank you, younger sister. Elder sister will remember. The owner smiled and said gently. When Yi Qinghan saw that Jian Qinxue had agreed, he immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Even if the others were jealous, he could suppress them. Emperor Yi pursed his lips. Although she was possessive, she was not crazy. Especially now that the Kuang Manor was in need of manpower, the owner's strength was very strong. She should be second only to Yi Qinghan, Yan Ao, Qitian Monkey King, Yan Yunbei, and a few other limited super experts. She could completely crush the others. Green Lotus Sword Deity did not care. She respected all of Yi Qinghan's decisions. Back then, she almost had a falling out because she did not trust him, and Fan Yin was an example. Therefore, she did not want to say too much. Moreover, Jian Qinxue had already expressed her opinion. Other people's opinions were unnecessary. Other than agreeing, there was no other choice. Fan Yin was a little excited at this moment. Since Yi Qinghan had already taken in these two women, why would he care about one more? Moreover, Emperor Yi supported her. Do I have to take the initiative? Ever since Yi Qinghan had forgiven her, he had never touched her. Therefore, she still had some misgivings in her heart. In addition, she had been rather busy these past few years, so she didn't think too much about it. However, with the addition of the owner and Xianyuan Qingyun today, she had no choice but to think about it. Everyone had their own thoughts. Yi Qinghan sat in the main seat, accompanied by Emperor Yi and Jian Qinxue. Based on what everyone said, they had established a new army and were just waiting for his approval. However, since Crazed Mansion had decided to establish the assassin army, it was no longer important whether Yi Qinghan approved or not. Everyone knew that he respected the decision of everyone in Crazed Mansion. Sooner or later, we will have to fight against Class 1 Hall, and this fight might last for a long time. We might win, but we might also lose. Assassin's army will provide us with a lot of resources, and it will also reduce a lot of our pressure. But this army is always outside, and it's rather dangerous. When you join Assassin's army, you must think carefully. If you don't want to join, I won't force you. Yi Qinghan sat up straight. When he was serious, he would definitely not joke around. However, there were only those who wanted to join the assassin army. None of them wanted to leave, especially those from Class 1 Hall. They all wanted to prove themselves. Who would give up on this opportunity? Furthermore, they were the leaders of the assassin army. Crazed Mansion had already confirmed their positions. Even if they were to die in battle, they would die without regrets. We swear our loyalty to Crazed Mansion. The assassin army will not embarrass Crazed Mansion. The group stood up and made up their minds. Yi Qinghan smiled and said, "Everyone, there's no need to be so formal. From today onwards, I will hand you all over to Brother Yen. I believe I don't need to tell you how strong he is. We are convinced." Everyone bowed and said. Yi Qinghan saw that the matter had been settled, so he raised his cup and said, "Then let's eat and drink and discuss the Tao. After this meal, let's start fighting to the death. Once the war is over and peace is complete, I'll treat everyone to a drink." Hua! Outside the heaven-suppressing palace, at least a few thousand experts raised their cups. Everyone chatted as they ate. The people brought by Yi Tong and Lin Mo were all smiling happily. They thanked Yi Tong and the others for bringing them here. In this place, they felt an unprecedented sense of glory, dignity, and unity. Everyone was chatting and eating. Only the chess saint had a serious expression. After a long silence, he raised his head and looked at Yi Qinghan. However, Yi Qinghan was looking at him as if he had been paying attention to him for a long time. Yi Qinghan nodded and stood up to signal the chess saint. The two walked side by side through the noisy crowd and came to a forest. "Chess saint, if you have something to say, just say it. I will try my best to fulfill your request." "I will not be stingy," said Yi Qinghan calmly. The chess saint took a deep breath and said, "Yi, I want resources. More resources. I hope that 50% of the resources produced by the herb fields in the undying immortal world will be given to the heaven-conquering camp." Yi Qinghan was shocked. If he wanted 50% of the resources, everyone in the undying immortal world would get 50%. The chess saint's appetite was too big. "Promise me that when the war starts next year, I will help you kill a Taigu emperor," said the chess saint proudly. Too confident, too arrogant. How awesome would the military saint have to be to kill a Taigu emperor with 5 million soldiers from the heaven-conquering camp? Yi Qinghan stared at the chess saint. After a long time, he said, "Let's not talk about whether you can kill a Taigu emperor. Just 50% of the resources is too much. How many people are there in the world? If you take half, how am I going to explain it to the others in the undying immortal world?" The chess saint replied coldly, "The others are all trash. Other than the older generation of the undying immortal world, the ancient massacre god, the inner sect, outer sect, and the supreme assassin army, everyone else can be given up." It would be a waste to give them resources. Yi Qinghan shook his head, unable to respond to the chess saint's request. The two of them walked slowly into the distance. Their speed became faster and faster as they approached the heaven-conquering camp that was stationed at the periphery of the Crying Ghost Ridge. Yi Qinghan looked at the heaven-conquering camp's flag and was tempted. He wanted to see how the heaven-conquering camp looked like now. In the past 30,000 years, the heaven-conquering camp had taken 30% of the undying immortal world's resources. 30%. How much resources did the entire undying immortal world have? In addition to the 30,000 years of accumulation, the 5 million soldiers had swallowed countless resources. Hua! Yi Qinghan and the chess saint stepped into the heaven-conquering camp. The people standing guard were all first-stage big shots. This meant that the 5 million soldiers had all advanced to the first-stage big shot realm. 5 million big shots would consume a terrifying amount of resources in a day. It was no wonder that the chess saint wanted 50% of the resources. Not long after, the undying immortal world would not be able to contain such a big Buddha. Yi Qinghan looked at the people standing guard. They were standing straight on the spot and did not look sideways. They were even expressionless when they saw the two of them. There was no fanaticism, only a cold aura. They only listened to the chess saint's will. Even Yi Qinghan was unable to influence their emotions. Yi Qinghan was a little wary. He had lost control of this group, and he did not dare to trust the chess saint. If the heaven-conquering camp was controlled by Yen Ao, he would not hesitate to give 50% of the resources. An army of 5 million soldiers exhausting a Taigu emperor to death. This was already an epic event. Anyone would bet on it. Yi Qinghan slowly stepped into the center of the army. Even if this group of people were resting or cultivating, the arrangement of the tents was in order. If one place was moved, it would affect the entire camp. Should I bet on it? Yi Qinghan pondered for a long time and did not dare to make up his mind. If he lost the bet, the chess saint would be like a venomous snake that could bite him to death. There would be no chance for him to resist. If he won the bet, he would have one more main force in the future. This group was too scary, but it was not a good thing to lose control. Chapter 28-20. The expedition to Heaven Camp was an army that was comparable to the Crazed Manor. Most importantly, they did not have individual wills, only collective consciousness. Their faith was not in Yi Qinghan or the Crazed Manor, but in the chess saint, the great saint of the school of the military. Yi Qinghan walked slowly in the camp, thinking about how to drag the army back. The chess saint was waiting, but he could not make the decision now. The resources were distributed by Jian Qinxue, and no one else could interfere. He could only ask for the most important resources through Yi Qinghan. Gather the heaven-conquering camp, I want to see them, Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice. The chess saint looked at Yi Qinghan and asked calmly, Yi Qinghan, do you not trust me anymore? The corners of Yi Qinghan's mouth curled up slightly, and a demonic look flashed in his eyes under the mask. He had never dared to fully trust anyone who had betrayed him once, especially the chess saint. The chess saint was too uncontrollable, and Yi Qinghan did not dare to fully trust him, even if the chess saint's army was very powerful. Sage, there's no need to talk about trust or distrust. I'd like to see who's in charge of such an army. The Celestial Expedition Battalion is your private army, not mine. If we lose control one day, they'll be able to devour half of Insane Manor. Yi Qinghan looked straight at the chess saint and said in a deep voice. Hua! The chess saint did not say anything else. He waved his hand, and the heaven-conquering camp's flag soared into the sky. Dong dong dong, then, the war drums sounded, and the sound of the war drums echoed for miles, even reaching the heaven-suppressing prefecture. Dong dong dong. Hua hua hua. The army of 5 million consisted of heavy infantry, heavy cavalry, archers, and everything else. Their movements were uniform, and they were all in the Big Brother realm, from the 4th stage to the 1st stage. Every 10,000-man army had the same overall strength, and the captains were all in the 3rd stage, and they were armed to the teeth. All these years, they had used up countless resources, and it was terrifying just thinking about it. Boom boom boom. Hua hua hua. The ground trembled, and the rumbling sounds did not stop. Just the aura alone was enough to make Yi Qinghan's battle robe flutter. Whoosh! The war flag swayed, and the army's phalanx changed. It contained the universe's strongest dharma and logos of devouring, and its order was indestructible. Unless someone killed the 5 million troops in one fell swoop, there was no way to defeat this army. Yi Qinghan slowly walked up to the high platform and looked down at the army. The war drums of the Yan clan had been brought over by them, and the sound of the drums could be heard everywhere. Everyone in the army had the same expression. There was no fanaticism, only indifference. Even though they believed in Yi Qinghan, they were suppressed. In the army, they could only obey the orders of one person, and that was the chess saint. Yi Qinghan swept his gaze across the army. His might soared to the heavens, as if he wanted to be on par with the heavens. The image of a dragon and a tiger filled the air, and the might of an overlord surged in all directions. Whoosh! The chess saint waved his hand as an expert quickly moved a huge chair over and placed it behind Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan waved his battle robes and slowly sat down. He rested his chin on his right fist and crossed his legs as he looked down at the black mass of the heaven-conquering camp. However, the army was indifferent and had no intention of greeting him. This army was different from Quang Manor. They had a strict hierarchy, and those with a higher rank could suppress others. However, when they saw the supreme commander of Quang Manor, they were indifferent. The chess saint stepped to Yi Qinghan's side and scolded angrily, "Why aren't you greeting the Quang Manor's manor head? Are you trying to rebel?" "Greetings, manor head." "Greetings, commander." The 5 million troops immediately knelt down on one knee and shouted in unison. The voices of the 5 million troops reverberated in the sky, wave after wave, sweeping through thousands of layers of waves. Yi Qinghan took off his mask, and his handsome face was filled with a cold aura. He was firm and resolute, and the aura of an overlord and emperor emanated from him. He did not give the order for the heaven-conquering camp to rise, so the chess saint naturally did not dare to say anything. The 5 million troops of the heaven-conquering camp remained on one knee, not moving at all. Thump, 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 other than the sound of each other's heartbeats, there was not even the sound of birds chirping within 1,000 miles. After a long time, Yi Qinghan said quietly, "Stand up and look at me." The army stood up in unison and looked straight at Yi Qinghan. They bowed and said, "Thank you, manor head." Whoosh! Yi Qinghan stood up, and his aura soared into the sky. He looked down at the army, gathered his strength, and shouted in a dignified manner, "I will only ask you 2 questions today. The first question is, when the commander gives the order, will you flatten any place without hesitation?" The army looked at the chess saint, not knowing what Yi Qinghan meant by asking this question. "Answer the manor head." The chess saint said calmly. "Yes. Wherever the commander points, the heaven-conquering camp will flatten." The 5 million troops answered without hesitation. Yi Qinghan's lips curled into a cold smile. The cohesiveness of this heaven-conquering camp wouldn't lose to the Quang Manor in the slightest. But it was precisely because of this that they were like iron plates, unbreakable and unbreakable. They were extremely terrifying. "Very good. I admire your answers. As the commander, with such an army, I can die without regrets." Yi Qinghan took a deep breath, and a murderous glint flashed across his eyes. His cold and evil eyes seemed to be staring at everyone's hearts. "The second question is, when the commander gives the order to attack the heaven-suppressing palace and you all flatten it, how do you think I should treat you all? How do you all treat me?" SSSS. At this moment, the chess saint gasped. Yi Qinghan's first question hid the second question, but they did not expect it to be this question. The army's pupils shrunk. They never thought that the first question would be so terrifying. Killing and destroying the heart, but this question was even more terrifying than that. No one knew what would happen when Yi Qinghan was angered. But the chess saint knew that the enemy would be in a very, very miserable state. Those who offend my race will be killed no matter how far away they are. The chess saint knew Yi Qinghan too well. Back then, he had investigated Yi Qinghan's battle experience in the small realms. He had also seen how Yi Qinghan barged into the immortal realm alone, spending countless years just to kill Sikong Tan Lang. Today, Yi Qinghan was angered. Because the heaven-conquering camp had lost control, he was truly enraged. Hua! The chess saint had never knelt before, but today, he did so without hesitation and said respectfully, Yi Manor Head, why would I attack the crazed manor? The 5 million soldiers from the heaven-conquering camp narrowed their eyes and gasped. They did not know how to answer Yi Qinghan's question. Yi Qinghan looked at the chess saint coldly and waved his finger. Commander, don't panic. I just want to ask the heaven-conquering camp, how should I treat you when the crazed manor is destroyed by you? How should you treat me? Boom! Answer me. Yi Qinghan was enraged. He pointed his blade at the army and went against the heaven-conquering camp alone. Hua! The army knelt again. No one dared to release their aura to confront Yi Qinghan, but no one knew how to answer Yi Qinghan's question. The chess saint also did not know how to answer. It seemed like there was no answer because the only answer that could satisfy Yi Qinghan was for the heaven-conquering camp to overturn the first answer. However, the heaven-conquering camp did not seem like they would do that. Other than the chess saint, no one else could lead the heaven-conquering camp. Perhaps even Yan Ao could not do it. For the sake of peace, the crazed manor waged war against Elite Hall. In order to nurture all of you, I have spent countless resources. Now, I want to know, what is your answer to the second question after answering the first question? Yi Qinghan's gaze was cold as he asked in a dignified manner. Chapter 28-21. The chess saint's breathing started to become unstable. His heart was indeed restless, especially after the development of the Expedition Heaven camp. No one in the world could suppress him anymore. If he had more resources, he could rely on the Expedition Heaven camp to play chess with the heavens in the future. Even the Taigu Emperor would be crushed. There was the number one emperor in the ancient immemorial era. Today, there was Yi Qinghan of the insane manor. However, no one could ignore the Expedition Heaven camp. The chess saint slowly stood up and stared at Yi Qinghan. Yi, this is just your assumption. No, this is a fact that has already happened. I won't ask you today, I will ask the Expedition Heaven camp. The Expedition Heaven camp has already told me the first answer. They will trample every place you pointed to, including the insane manor. Since it has already become a fact, I will let them tell me how I should treat them now and how they should treat me now. Yi Qinghan said coldly. The Expedition Heaven camp did not speak. They had nothing to say. The reason Yi Qinghan had come today was to find out who the Heaven Conquest camp was for. Therefore, he was being overbearing and had to get an answer. Today, you must answer the second question. If you remain silent, you have two choices. First, the Expedition Heaven camp will disband. Second, raise your weapons and point them at me. Yi Qinghan said firmly. Yi Qinghan's pressure was too strong. If it was anyone else, the Expedition Heaven camp would definitely revolt today. No one spoke, but Yi Qinghan pressed on. All lieutenants, commanders, and captains, step forward. Yi Qinghan said coldly. Hua! A total of 600 experts stepped forward. 500 captains and the rest were lieutenants and commanders. Answer me starting from the highest commander. Don't think of answering me with silence. If you remain silent, I will start killing from the commanders until someone speaks. Yi Qinghan said coldly. Below the commander were 3 commanders. At this moment, the 3 of them were sweating profusely. They took a deep breath and knelt on one knee in front of Yi Qinghan. They said respectfully, the commander will never betray the insane manner. You've gone off topic. Answer me directly. Yi Qinghan slowly stepped into the air and appeared in front of the 3 of them. His killing intent was already apparent. If the 3 of them did not answer him today, he would not hesitate to kill them. The commander of the heaven-conquering camp was high and mighty, but at this moment, he was like an ant. Yi Qinghan said quietly, bring the incense. You have the time it takes for a stick of incense to burn to decide whether you want to answer my questions directly, or choose to disband on the spot, or stand up and draw your weapons. The chess saint did not dare to disobey and could only order someone to bring an incense stick. The incense had already been lit and burned bit by bit. They had never felt that time could pass so quickly before. The chess saint didn't know what answer Yi Qinghan wanted, and it was even more impossible for the others. Now, they could only answer with their own hearts. If they were wrong, then they were wrong. If they were right, then they were right. The commander-in-chief, lieutenants, and captains were all drenched in cold sweat as they racked their brains to think of an answer to this question. Tap. Duh. Tap tap tap, Yi Qinghan's fingertips tapped on the back of his saber as if he was also counting the time. However, his fingertips seemed to be tapping on the hearts of these people. The commander-in-chief felt as if his liver and gallbladder were being torn apart. At this moment, the experts of the crazed manor had already arrived at the Crying Ghost Ridge. They stood on a distant mountain and looked at the army. They still didn't know what Yi Qinghan was doing, but the austere aura was already spreading. It could be felt from afar. After a long time, the incense stick burned out and the time was up. How should I treat you? How should you treat me? It's time to answer me. Yi Qinghan stared at the 3 commander-in-chief and said coldly. The commander-in-chief, the mystic skeleton, had a status second only to the chess saint. At this moment, he took a deep breath, bowed, and said, I will retreat after you appear. When the manor lord takes my life, I will repay the commander-in-chief's appreciation with my death. The second commander-in-chief, Zhang Jiang, had control of 1.3 million soldiers. He was also a person of high status. At this moment, he said, I believe the commander-in-chief won't give such an order. If he does, I will attack the crazed manor. If the manor lord appears, I will be in a dilemma and can only repay the commander-in-chief with my death. The third commander-in-chief, Wu Ming, was the youngest, but he was also a wise man. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to reach this position. At this moment, he didn't know what answer Yi Qinghan wanted, but he had his own answer in his heart. I grew up watching the manor lord's legendary battle achievements since I was young. My lord has always been my faith. I was fortunate enough to be groomed by the commander-in-chief to become a commander-in-chief. The manor lord was worried that the heavenly conquest camp would lose control and asked these 2 questions today. I don't dare to guess the answer in your heart, but I do. The heavenly conquest camp is the commander-in-chief's private army in name, but in reality, it belongs to the crazed manor. Therefore, when the manor lord asked the first question, the entire heavenly conquest camp thought that it was excluding the crazed manor. If the manor lord asked the first question again, I can guarantee that the answer of the entire heavenly conquest camp would be different. Today, I dare to guarantee with my life that if the commander-in-chief ever gives the order to attack the crazed manor, I will thank the commander-in-chief with my death for grooming me, but I will never attack the crazed manor. Therefore, I no longer have the chance to answer your second question. Wu Ming raised his troops with both hands and knelt in front of Yi Qinghan. He was at the mercy of the manor lord. Yi Qinghan smiled and turned to look at the chess saint. He had been loyal to the art of chess and the art of war all his life. He didn't even have any children, but he had a group of loyal soldiers. Out of the three people's answers, the first two represented more than 90% of the Expedition Heaven camp, while Wu Ming's answer represented the remaining 10%. The chess saint's face was calm. He didn't say a word as he waited for Yi Qinghan's decision. "Saint, do you see this? This is the Expedition Heaven camp. You are not alone. They are loyal to the Expedition Heaven camp and you, not the crazed manor. I don't trust you, but the Expedition Heaven camp." Yi Qinghan pointed at the chess saint and said firmly, "I dare to use you, so I dare to trust you. However, I don't trust this army. Their weapons can point at me and the crazed manor at any time. You seem to have forgotten to remind them of something." The chess saint sighed. He now understood what Yi Qinghan was trying to do. Whoosh! The chess saint stepped onto the high platform and stared at the army. He said in a deep voice, "All members of the Expedition Heaven camp, listen up." Whoosh! The army returned to their positions and quickly stood up to obey the order. This old man has always forgotten one thing, and that is the ownership and loyalty of the Heaven Conquering Camp. Remember, the Heaven Conquering Camp belongs to the Kuang Manor. You are not only loyal to me, but also to the Manor Master of the Kuang Manor. Remember what I said today. When my orders completely violate the safety and interests of the Kuang Manor, you are to follow the orders of the Manor Master without any hesitation. The chess saint said solemnly. Yes. The Expedition Heaven camp immediately replied. Yi Qinghan asked two questions to get the chess saint to express his stance. It seemed like he didn't trust the army, but in fact, he was knocking the chess saint down. Since he gave the army the resources of the crazed manor, he should tell them who they were truly loyal to. From today onwards, the Expedition Heaven camp will be renamed the Expedition Heaven Camp of the Crazed Manor. We will participate in the overall mobilization of the crazed manor to achieve the goal of seamless cooperation. In addition, I will announce that the resources of the Expedition Heaven camp will occupy 50% of the resources of the entire crazed manor. No one is allowed to embezzle the resources of the Expedition Heaven camp. Yi Qinghan's majestic voice reverberated in the sky. He then looked at the chess saint. I dare to give you what you want. Do you still think that I don't trust you? The chess saint sighed and shook his head. This isn't your fault. I didn't consider it thoroughly. All these years, I have been wholeheartedly nurturing this army. Subconsciously, I really treated them as my own. Therefore, I never told them who they were most loyal to. That's why today's big joke appeared. Yi Qinghan patted the chess saint's shoulder and said with a smile, the chess saint is too lonely. It's time to find a woman to accompany you. If you had 3 sons or 2 daughters, perhaps you wouldn't be so worried about personal gains and losses and treat the heaven-conquering camp as your own. However, this heaven-conquering camp of the Kuang Manor really belongs to you. However, don't get confused about who it is loyal to. Chapter 28-22. Yi Qinghan was nagging the chess saint. The chess saint reacted quickly. At least today, he did not overreact. He even expressed his stance in front of everyone. He told the conquering heaven camp that their loyalty was not to one person but to the entire crazy manor. The conquering heaven camp was no longer an independent force. They belonged to the crazy manor. The chess saint looked at Yi Qinghan and understood his motive. Dual cultivation and children. Don't hold the conquering heaven camp too tightly. It could easily cause trouble. Sigh, I'm just a bag of old bones. I never thought that I would have children with someone. The chess saint sighed. Yi Qinghan laughed and hugged the chess saint's shoulder. You should learn from Master Nine Nether. He and Senior Fozhen love children the most. They play with children on the northern Divine Island all year round. Now that I've pulled them out, they are not willing. You will understand when you have children. Then I'll have to trouble Yi Qinghan to find a suitable candidate for this old man. All these years, my focus has not been on this. I realize that I don't know any outstanding women. The chess saint laughed bitterly. Yi Qinghan shook his head and replied, "It's one thing for you to abstain from worldly desires, but how can you make 5 million soldiers abstain from worldly desires as well?" Whoosh! Yi Qinghan turned around and said to the conquering heaven camp, 10 days later, the marshal's wedding will be celebrated. I'll give you 30 days off. Find your ideal partner and hold dual cultivation. But if anyone dares to use force, don't blame me for being impolite. Now, the ratio of men to women in the immortal world was very big. Many men died in battle while women did not go to the battlefield. Therefore, there were more men than women. The ratio was almost 1 to 5. Many women were still widows and could not find a suitable partner. The conquering heaven camp had many experts and could solve this famine. They could also rope in the conquering heaven camp and not let it become a lifeless mechanical army. Only with flesh and blood could they have feelings. Only then could they have feelings for the crazy manner. Whoosh! The army was excited and cheered. The chess saint's turbid eyes revealed a trace of complicated emotions. He originally did not want to marry and did not want to be burdened. Having a wife and children was a weakness. But now, Yi Qinghan was forcing him to marry and have children, so he had no choice but to agree. However, a few years later, the chess saint was extremely grateful to Yi Qinghan for his decision. Children would always be the softest piece of meat in a man's heart. So what if they became his weakness? Only with a weak spot would one be able to fight to the death. In front of them were their enemies, and behind them were their children. If they did not fight, their entire clan would be annihilated. Announce to the world that Shui Qi Saint of Quang Manor's heaven-conquering camp has officially been conferred the title of Saint Prince of Quang Manor. Tomorrow, I will personally select a consort for him. Every manor will select a wise and beautiful lady and send them to heaven-suppressing palace. Yi Qinghan soared into the sky and his spiritual sense covered more than half of the undying immortal world. Although his cultivation was not as strong as the Hall Master of Elite Hall, he was still able to transmit his voice to the world. In less than half a day, the various mansions started to take action. Their first choice was not beauty but wisdom. With the chess saint's judgment, he would not lust after women and Yi Qinghan knew him well. In less than half a month, all the major manors sent a group of good-looking women. Most of them were quite knowledgeable, especially in the field of astrology. There were quite a few people who knew a thing or two about it. The chess saint asked a few simple questions outside of heaven-suppressing palace and only 2 to 3 people could answer them. Everyone wanted to be the consort of the Saint Prince. Once selected, their status would skyrocket. Initially, the chess saint wanted to select 1 or 2 more ladies. But who knew that Yi Qinghan would just wave his hand and decide to take all of them? It's a waste of youth if one is not a romantic. The Saint Prince is old but strong. With 2 to 3 ladies accompanying him, he will definitely not be lonely. It's decided then. Yi Qinghan's attitude was firm, he did not give the chess saint any chance to refute. The chess saint could only smile bitterly. This fella had already found himself a few wives and now he was forcing others to do the same. As for the other ladies, their salaries were all increased and they were brought back by the experts in the mansions. In just a day, the heaven-conquering camp was scattered all over the immortal world, each looking for a partner. Other than that, the Quang Manor also started to build residences for the heaven-conquering camp. They were all gathered together during battles or training. At other times, they would all return to their own mansions to spend time with their wives. When children were born, the Quang Manor would nurture them and build an academy to ease the heaven-conquering camp's worries. Yi Qinghan's goal was simple. He wanted to use the children to lock down the heaven-conquering camp. Of course, he would not threaten the heaven-conquering camp to do anything, but they could not rebel or it would be a case of father and son killing each other. Yi Qinghan's plan was implemented for less than 30 years. Most of the heaven-conquering camp had their own children. They were all raised by the wives of the heaven-conquering camp until they were 6 years old. Then, they would all be enrolled into the academy and become students of the Kuang Manor Academy. 30 years later, the Kuang Manor welcomed a joyous event. The chess saint had 2 children, twins. It was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. The chess saint was unprecedentedly excited. He did not even train the army anymore and handed everything over to the Bone Sage, Zhang Jiang, and Wu Ming. Looking at the babies in swaddling clothes, the chess saint beamed with joy. For the first time, he thanked Yi Qinghan for his efforts. Children were often the soft spot in a man's heart. They might not be able to feel it when they did not have children, but when a child was born, even a simple cry or the faintest laugh could tug at a man's heartstrings. The chess saint had a tie and something to rely on. Yi Qinghan personally went to the sacred King Manor to bless and confer titles. He gave the chess saint enough face. At this moment, Yi Qinghan was finally relieved. The heaven-conquering camp could not escape. Phew, Yi Qinghan lay on the chair and felt unprecedentedly relaxed. As a king, he had too many things to consider. It was not that he did not trust the chess saint, but it was better to be safe than sorry. If the chess saint really rebelled, not only the Kuang Manor, but the entire immortal world would be plunged into misery and suffering. He had no choice but to hold the chess saint in his hands. After being busy for so long, Yi Qinghan felt that it was time to settle down and go into seclusion again. Brother Yan, that stock of heavenly medicine, how should we deal with it? On this day, Yi Qinghan gathered all the older generation of the Kuang Manor. However, he did not include the others. A stock of heavenly medicine was able to heal Jing Tiandi's serious injuries. The power contained in the heavenly medicine was too strong. It was not something that a single person could swallow. The only pity was that there was too little of it. There was only 1 stock. Only then did Yan Yunbei remember that the heavenly medicine was still in the forbidden area of the back mountain of his Kuang Manor. When everyone heard that there was a heavenly medicine, they were instantly energized. Because of the limited resources, their cultivation was stuck and they could not move. Let's split it. It's not enough for 1 person. It's enough for more than 10 of us. There's no need to split it with the children. They're too young and need to settle down. Yan Yunbei suggested. Yi Qinghan nodded. No matter how selfless he was, he could not split the heavenly medicine. Otherwise, he would not be selfless. He would be a fool. Then let's split it. Go into seclusion in the Master God space for 1,000 years. After that, we'll go to the ancient immortal world. If any of you break through the Taigu Emperor's realm, we won't be so passive. As for the Yan tribe's backup, I don't know who it is and I don't know if I can trust it. Right now, I can only trust you guys. Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice. Chapter 28-23. In the Master God space, other than the older generation of the Crazy Manor, everyone else was evacuated. Jiang Jingtian, Gu Qingyu, and the others had been stuck at the Dao Patrol realm for many years. Now that they were emperors and had the recognition of the heavens, they could also reach the Dao Patrol realm. However, it was impossible for them to be compared to the 12 immemorial emperors. Because of Yan Yunbei's explanation, no one was willing to proclaim themselves emperors at this time. They were all waiting for an opportunity. Yan Yunbei took out the heavenly medicine. At the beginning of the primal chaos, holy light filled the air. It wasn't a big heavenly medicine, but it contained enough energy to explode anyone here. If anyone could really bear it, their strength would surpass the 12 immemorial emperors. The Taigu Emperor was born because of these heavenly medicines. We will distribute the heavenly medicines according to strength and overall strength. It doesn't mean that whoever gets more will get more benefits. The heavenly medicines contain a lot of energy. Those with weaker cultivations might destroy their foundation from the impact of the heavenly medicine. Yan Yunbei held the heavenly medicine in his hand. He was the one who took it back, so he had the right to decide. No one from the crazy manor objected. The heavenly medicine belonged to Yan Yunbei. No one would be so shameless as to think that Yan Yunbei was providing them with heavenly medicines for free. In fact, they might even think that it was too little. Ye's battle strength is the highest, and his ability to bear the heavenly medicine is also the strongest. Therefore, he will take 1/10, and the remaining 90. Brother Heavenly Monkey will take 1/9. His startling Heavenly Emperor staff technique has reached the peak, and he needs more heavenly medicines to break through to the last level. Among us, other than Yi, he is the only one who has the highest chance of reaching the immemorial realm. Yan Yunbei quickly distributed the heavenly medicines. He would tell everyone how much they got clearly. The crazy manor would understand, because the more heavenly medicines they got, the greater the responsibility they had to bear. The third was Yan Ao. He was the Yan ancestors' backup. Although he might not reach the realm of the greatest emperor, his battle strength wasn't too far off. The fourth was Lin Wuqian, a junior. The fifth was Yi Qinghan's first brother, Gu Qingyu. Other than the older generation, there was one more person. Her battle strength wouldn't lose to anyone in the crazy manor. Galaxy-defying Sky was already at the Mahayana realm. It seemed difficult to match the Taigu Emperor, but there was no harm in trying. In the chief god space, everyone had entered a state of seclusion. Yi Qinghan first split his portion of the heavenly medicine into 3 portions, as he did not dare to swallow it all at once. His entire body was filled with the aura of primal chaos. His strength surged. At this moment, he could see the primal chaos of the celestial domain. Even if it was just the tip of the iceberg, controlling it was enough to give one heaven-shaking strength. Yi Qinghan closed his eyes and meditated on the primal chaos domain's initial state. With a wave of his hand, he could mobilize the power of primal chaos. He reversed it again and again, and the entire godhood space was about to collapse. This chief god space couldn't withstand his cultivation. Reversing the primordial power wasn't something this ancient chief god space could withstand. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan left the godlord space and shot into the depths of the starry sky. Eventually, he arrived at planet Greedwolf, where he sat down cross-legged. Starlight sprang up around him, bathing him in starlight. He was like a child of the stars, causing planet Greedwolf to erupt with boundless power. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Boom! The power in Yi Qinghan's body surged and surged. His anti-order Dharma body had reached the Mahayana stage. He could withstand a peak attack from a Dao Patrol realm expert without being damaged. However, he couldn't just stand there and let Yi Qinghan hit him. Everything would be damaged. Although the laws here weren't as good as the ancient immortal world, it was still the ancient universe. It was enough for him to break through the Dao Patrol realm. It was unprecedented for him to break through that realm before becoming an emperor. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's consciousness covered the surroundings. He was now trying his best to break through to the next realm. The higher the realm, the better. As for the anti-order Dharma body, he could refine it in the future to make it more lethal. His realm was rising bit by bit. Yi Qinghan had divided the 12 immemorial emperors into 9 sublevels. The Dao Patrol realm was the 3rd sublevel. He was now in the 4th sublevel. As for the Yen Emperor, he didn't belong to the 9 sublevels. If he became an emperor, what would the Taigu Emperor be? If he swallowed the heavenly medicine, what would a heavenly emperor of all eternity count for? Yi Qinghan blocked the Yen Emperor's message. The existence of such a person was purely to suppress the Dao heart of others. Yi Qinghan didn't want to be disturbed by his strength. Boom! As time passed, 100 years later, he broke through to the 5th sublevel. 1/3 of the heavenly medicine's medicinal properties were refined. His body broke through to the Mahayana stage. At this point, his body could defeat a Tao Patrol Realm expert without using any anti-order Dharma body. Whoosh! His body shone brightly. It was a little like the energy waves from the alien star. The second heavenly medicine was swallowed. This time, he saw the Chaos Heavenly Domain's Dharma body. It was still the tip of the iceberg, but it was clearer. Yi Qinghan's body began to emit heat, and the surrounding temperature began to rise. The ground began to crack, and the Dharma and logos of order began to tremble. The voracious wolf star was on the verge of collapsing, let alone the surrounding Dharma and logos of space. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Boom. Space continued to collapse. Mountains and rivers flowed in reverse. Stars flashed, forming a net. Endless power of stars gathered in Yi Qinghan's body. If it weren't for Yi Qinghan changing the order of the giant star beast's demon core, it would have already collapsed. 100 years after 100, the cycle repeated. Yi Qinghan had swallowed countless heavenly medicine's medicinal properties without suffering any loss. 6th sublevel. 7th sublevel, Yi Qinghan firmly occupied the 7th sublevel. If he tiptoed, he could touch the realm of the 12 immemorial emperors. Boom! The voracious wolf star collapsed. Deep chasms extended endlessly. It was as if the entire voracious wolf star was going to be shattered. Whoosh! In the depths of the endless, a dazzling star stole one's soul. It was especially distinguishable. That alien star appeared again. It was countless miles away. With so many stars, it could be seen at a glance. However, it only appeared in the blink of an eye. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared without a trace. Someone was chasing after the alien star. The alien star did not dare to appear. The alien star was supporting Yi Qinghan's cultivation. In the end, Yi Qinghan had to protect the alien star's foundation. The two formed a state of parasitic coexistence. However, it was the alien star that was protecting Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan swallowed the last piece of heavenly medicine. This was the last piece. However, his physical body and soul spirit were already at their limits. If he swallowed any more heavenly medicine, it would only be counterproductive. Whoosh! Gulp! Yi Qinghan did not know if swallowing this heavenly medicine would allow him to enter the 9th level. However, he still swallowed it resolutely. Boom boom boom. Yi Qinghan's physical body was restless. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. His brows were tightly knitted. He was in extreme pain. He had only swallowed 1/10 of a stalk of heavenly medicine. If he had swallowed a complete stalk of heavenly medicine, the entire sky would have been filled with him. He would have exploded. Fresh blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. He used the nomological order and anti-order nomological laws to complement each other. He tempered his Mahayana physical body. His physical body finally stabilized at the 7th sublevel. Just his physical body alone could kill a Tao Patrol warrior easily. Bang! The bottleneck of the 8th sublevel was broken. His soul spirit instantly covered the entire voracious wolf star. It even spread into the depths of the galaxy. His soul spirit had reached a new height. Chapter 28-24. After breaking through the 8th minor level, he was only one step away from the level of the 12 ancient monarchs. The patrolling existence was pulled away. Yi Qinghan's eyes were tightly shut. The order of the blue heavenly flames around him had already been completely reversed. Yi Qinghan was slowly changing the Inferno Heaven's inverse technique. With a single palm strike, a massive boulder was instantly disintegrated. All of the laws of order were destroyed. In cultivation, time flew by like a white steed, as fast as lightning. Yi Qinghan was cultivating outside of the over-god space because his power was too terrifying and the over-god space could not withstand it. However, the others were all cultivating inside the over-god space. Yi Qinghan had cultivated for 800 years, which was equivalent to the others cultivating for 80,000 years. At this moment, Gu Qingyu had touched the heavenly sword Dao, the most fundamental foundation of the sword Dao. His body turned into a solitary sword and stood proudly in the over-god space. The void trembled and the space started to become unstable. Xiao. Hua. Gu Qingyu left the over-god space. He had no choice as his sword Dao was too powerful. With just his sword will and sword qi, he could disintegrate the laws and destroy all life. Then, Qitian Monkey King opened his eyes and without using the monarch staff, he pierced through the over-god space. Hua. Qitian Monkey King appeared outside of the Star River. His speed was too fast and in just a blink of an eye, he was 108,000 miles away. With the monarch staff in his hand, he stood proudly in the sky. He looked at the heavenly river and touched the sky. In. Xiao. Hua. The district mistress walked out of the over-god space. Stars intertwined and the star river that finally calmed down erupted again. Bathed in holy light, treasure light flowed and the district mistress seemed to have turned into a goddess. She might really become the next generation's empress. Xiao, the fourth to appear was Jian Qinxue. With the immemorial yin-yang monarch sword in her hand, the yin and yang around her became one. However, she kept a low profile and did not enter the Star River. Instead, she entered the heaven-suppressing palace's palace. There were too many political matters waiting for her to handle and she did not want to expose her strength. The fifth one to appear was Yen Ao. His body was filled with the aura of an emperor. He stepped on Yen Emperor's shoulder and stood up. No one knew if he could become Yen Emperor. However, no matter how weak he was still much more terrifying than the others. Especially when he used the 5 reincarnation swords of heaven, earth and human sovereign. Not many people in the world could contend against him. Yi Qingqing and Huoling Tian also appeared. Although they weren't from the older generation of Kuang Manor, they were from the Yen clan and could be trusted. There was no need to worry about betrayal. Even if they had devoured 1/30th of the heavenly medicine, it was still a terrifying amount of resources. Now, their fighting strength had broken through the shackles. Although they couldn't be considered the top experts of Kuang Manor, they were definitely in the top 12. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. More than 10 silhouettes flew into the air one after another. The Master God space could no longer withstand the vibrations of so many experts. Jiang Jingtian, Li Feng, Mo Li, Su Zhan, Li Peiza, Mu Zhuang, Bo Ai Saint, Sua Shuguang, Emperor Yi, Green Lotus Sword Saint and the others were all here. Su Zhan and Li Peiza were also not from the older generation of Kuang Manor. However, when Yi Qinghan brought them to deal with Class 1 Hall, they did not say anything. They could still trust them. Furthermore, with their fighting strength, Kuang Manor trusted them as well as their characters. There were many from the older generation who had exhausted their potential. But because of this heavenly medicine, they were able to regain their potential again. The older generation of the insane manor gathered in the galaxy and watched as Yi Qinghan's covetous wolf constellation began to break apart. The place where the blue mystical flame had first ignited was now a vacuum. Even the air and laws of nature no longer existed. A huge crater appeared below Yi Qinghan's greedy wolf star. It was so deep that it could fit a huge star inside. Whoosh! 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 Yi Qinghan bathed in the blue flames. At this moment, his soul was in an ethereal state of enlightenment. His palms began to move slowly. The burning heaven palm was raised, and its destructive power was already on display. Whoosh! 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 The people of Kuang Manor retreated. Now that Yi Qinghan was unconscious, if he attacked indiscriminately, these people would definitely be unlucky. It was even possible that they would be severely injured. There were only a few people standing near Yi Qinghan. Equaling Heaven's Monkey King with the heaven-startling staff in his hand, Gu Qingyu with the solitary sword in his hand, Yan Ao with the 5 Yan clan swords on his back, and the district master bathed in the river of stars. The rest had all retreated. The 4 of them stood side by side in the void, watching Yi Qinghan trigger the laws of nature. All the primordial laws were collapsing, and they were shocked. It was no wonder that the people of Class 1 Hall were so afraid of Yi Qinghan. He was an existence that could kill ancient gods and ancient immortals. 1/10 of the heavenly medicine had allowed him to break through the shackles and stand on the 8th minor level. He was only half a step away from the 9th minor level, and only 1 step away from the realm of the 12 immemorial emperors. Combined with the laws of nature, he might not be as good as the Flame Emperor, but he was definitely second only to the Flame Emperor. When the Flame Emperor reaches the top, even the heavens will be a man. Boom! Yi Qinghan seemed to casually slap a dead star in the distance. The palm print covered the sky, and in the blink of an eye, it broke through the laws of space and time and appeared on the dead star. Endless energy rebounded, and the huge energy directly shattered the star. However, the star collapsed inwards, shrinking into a finger-sized energy ball, which was then taken away by Yi Qinghan. It was too terrifying. No one could understand how such a thing could be done. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan slowly stood up. With a wave of his hand, the order of the mysterious flames below was all taken away. Otherwise, the entire greedy wolf star would have been refined. With a wave of his hand, Yi Qinghan refined a huge star, and refined it into an anti-order battle robe. He draped it over his shoulders, replacing the previous battle robe. Very few people could break this battle robe. The power of the Dao Patrol would be assimilated by the power of the anti-order laws, and become part of the defense against Yi Qinghan. Other than experts at the level of the 12 immemorial emperors, no one could hurt Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan reforged the 7 feet berserk. The Chaos Blade billet could not bear his power, and had to be reforged. With the star as the material, all the essence was taken away, and the Chaos Blade billet strengthened the berserk crazily. After several months, it successfully advanced to the 8th minor level of the weapon, second only to the Taigu Emperor's weapon. Roar! Whine! The berserk roar seemed to be like the clamor of the shocking sky staff in the distance. Whine! The shocking Sky Emperor's staff glowed brightly, followed by the Emperor's law. It seemed to have the power to destroy all Dao. Qitian Monkey King gripped the shocking Sky Emperor's staff. His golden avatar had already broken through the shackles, and was approaching the Taigu Emperor's body. Woo woo woo, the astral winds in the void were cold. Yi Qinghan retracted his saber, and the universe seemed to freeze. Yi Qinghan saw that everyone from Crazy Manor had come out of seclusion, and could not help but smile. He said plainly, "Let's go to the ancient immortal world. We don't need too many people. 20 is the limit. This time, we are not going to fight, but to use the laws of order of the ancient immortal world to consolidate our realms, and strive to get closer to the Taigu Emperor's realm." All right. Everyone was excited. Their realms were stuck, and the power in their bodies far exceeded their realms. However, the laws of order of the immortal world were far inferior to those of the ancient immortal world. They had to go. Chapter 28-25. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Yi Qinghan and the others arrived at the Yan Emperor's Law Steel. They did not dare to take it down immediately, fearing that the newly promoted Taigu Emperor would be guarding it. When I take down the Yan Emperor's Law Steel, all of you have to work together to defend. Even if the Taigu Emperor attacks, we will be prepared. We won't be defeated in one blow. Yi Qinghan looked at everyone, not daring to be careless. Everyone nodded. They had already gathered their strength and were waiting for an instant to erupt. Yi Qinghan had already taken down the Yen Emperor's law steel once. Yi Qinghan reached out and sucked out the law steel. He could clearly feel the fluctuations of the ancient immortal world on the other side. Bang! Yi Qinghan placed the law steel beside the stone wall, causing the ground to tremble. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's figure flashed and entered the ancient immortal world. There were no experts guarding this place. It seemed that the Taigu Emperor believed that Yi Qinghan would not enter the ancient immortal world again. Yi Qinghan exhaled and returned to the undying immortal world. He said to everyone, "We will all enter the ancient immortal world to break through and stabilize our cultivation. However, we need to take turns to keep watch. I will stand guard for you. We don't have much time." Yi Qinghan's cultivation had already reached the peak. The laws and principles of the undying immortal world could not suppress him much. After all, what he cultivated was not the laws and principles of order, but the laws and principles of order. He needed very little time. Everyone rushed through the barrier and entered the ancient immortal world. Majestic laws and principles of order and rich spiritual energy assailed everyone's nostrils. Everyone's cultivation and soul were nourished. Whoosh! There were less than 20 people, and they were all scattered in this space. Yi Qinghan rushed into the depths of the ancient immortal world. He had to at least ensure that no enemies approached. Fortunately, the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall, the new Taigu Emperor Chu Su, and the former Taigu Emperor were not here. They did not expect that Yi Qinghan would dare to bring people into the ancient immortal world. Qitian Monkey King, Gu Qingyu, and the other super experts were guarding the four directions while the others were cultivating diligently in the circle guarded by a few great experts. After 80,000 years of bitter cultivation in the chief god space, even those who were slightly more talented would improve greatly, not to mention the freaks of the Kuang manor. They had also swallowed some heavenly medicines, and their cultivation levels were rising. The power in their bodies was boundless and surging. The surrounding immortal qi surged like a whirlpool, surging towards this place. Yi Qinghan stood on the peak of a mountain. His eyes were shining brightly as he scanned the surroundings. His divine sense covered 80,000 li. As long as someone approached, he would react quickly. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Yi Qinghan reached into the void and devoured endless power, turning it into a power that defied the laws of order. The surrounding space was collapsing as if he was going to devour the entire ancient immortal world. This place was too far away from Class 1 Hall, but they still had some intelligence experts scattered around. This was especially so since this was the node between the immortal world and the ancient immortal world. The experts sped through the forest, constantly closing in on Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan's brows twitched and he opened his eyes. Seeing that there were spies approaching from all directions, he slowly lowered his devouring power and silently waited for these experts to come closer. 30,000 li, 20,000 li, half a day later, they had already entered the Yunling Basin. Yi Qinghan suddenly exploded. His figure leaped into the air, and his hand covered the sky as he ruthlessly turned towards those experts. Although the experts were strong, they were no match for Yi Qinghan. The moment Yi Qinghan grabbed them, their vitality was devoured, and even their corpses were disintegrated, leaving no trace behind. Swoosh swoosh swoosh, Yi Qinghan's figure flashed as if he was teleporting. As long as they were within the range of his consciousness, they could forget about leaving. Moments later, more than 20 spies were killed, not even leaving behind a corpse or a drop of blood. With so many experts and spies gone, Class 1 Hall would soon react. There was not much time left. Yi Qinghan became even more vigilant. At this moment, he did not dare to consolidate his cultivation. The slightest slack would cause the collapse of Crazed Manor. The experts of Crazed Manor were frantically consolidating and absorbing the laws and orders. The laws and orders here were of a higher level than those in the immortal world. The laws and orders that could not be comprehended in the immortal world could be comprehended here, and their realms were rising. Less than 20 people had rushed into the 9 sub-levels that Yi Qinghan had comprehended. Qitian Monkey King had stepped into the 9th level, and by the time he refined the 9th level of the heaven-shocking staff art, he would have stepped into the realm of the Taigu Emperor. Yan Yunbei had benefited from the heaven-shocking staff art and touched the threshold of the 9th sub-level. Now, he could make heaven and earth lose color with a single stab. District Master had reached the 8th sub-level, the grand ascension of the starry sky-defying technique, second only to the creator of this technique. Gu Qingyu had reached the 8th sub-level, surpassing Lin Wuxian in touching the origin of Sword Dao. Yan Ao had stepped into the 8th sub-level and was close to the threshold of the 9th sub-level. Apart from these super experts, Lin Wuxian, Jiang Jingtian, Hualing Tian, Huang Peng, Li Peiza, and Su Zhan had all reached the 2nd to 6th sub-levels. The gap in battle strength had begun to widen, and each sub-level had a qualitative increase in battle strength. In the early stages, everyone's battle strength was about the same. Now that they were consolidating, the gap in battle strength would be severe. Although Yi Qinghan was still at the peak of the 8th sub-level, his battle strength was enough to suppress Qitian Monkey King, the only expert in the 9th sub-level. However, Yi Qinghan knew that in terms of battle strength, he was inferior to Flame Emperor, an epic character. No one could surpass him. It was truly unprecedented and would never be replicated in the future. I will fulfill the promise you made back then. Yi Qinghan whispered. When Flame Emperor reaches the peak, even the heavens will be human. Yi Qinghan opened his eyes and looked at the rising sun and setting moon. Then, he looked at the experts of Kuang Fu who were still consolidating and breaking through. His fists were covered in sweat. Boom, 2 terrifying auras rushed out of the endless supreme ancient immortal world. The Taigu Emperor had awakened. The Hall Master of Elite Hall and Chu Shuqian rushed to the sky with killing intent. One came with a sword, the other with a spear of destruction. They were too fast, so fast that it was incomprehensible. Time and space were all distorted. Yi Qinghan stared at the collapsing space in the distance and quickly returned. He waved his hand and said, "Everyone, stop cultivating and return to the immortal world." Yi Qinghan didn't want to fight at all. There was no need to fight. Kuang Fu still had room for improvement, but the Taigu Emperor was gone. They were innately strong, so strong that they couldn't compete with them. However, their potential was there. They couldn't increase their cultivation. Even if they could, it would be very slow. Whoosh! However, he still underestimated the Hall Master of Elite Hall and Chu Shuqian. The two of them surrounded and closed in quickly. It was too late for Kuang Fu to retreat. Because even if some people could retreat, the others couldn't. Kuang Fu couldn't abandon their own people, so they chose to stay. Boom! Whoosh! There were less than 20 people, but their aura was comparable to that of countless armies. They all drew their swords and stood firmly behind Yi Qinghan. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan pulled out berserk and held the hilt with both hands. Cold light shot out and the space in front of him began to collapse. Chapter 28-26. The void collapsed, and all laws ceased to exist. However, the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall and the 2 Taigu Emperors in front of Chu Su joined forces and blasted through the collapsed void created by Yi Qinghan. Whoosh! The two appeared not far from Yi Qinghan. One was calm, while the other was filled with killing intent. His initial imprint shone brightly. There's a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. This is the ancient immortal world. Your Yen clan's backup is still in the undying immortal world. Let's see where you can run to today, the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall said coldly. Whoosh! The experts of crazed manner stepped forward and stood firmly beside Yi Qinghan. They drew their swords and waited with their staffs. Yi Qinghan gestured for everyone to calm down. Then, he looked straight at the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall and said calmly, Chu Jun, since I dared to come, I must have considered the worst possible outcome. Even you two Taigu emperors might not be able to keep all of us here. A cold light flashed across the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall. They didn't expect Yi Qinghan to know this name. Startling Sky Staff, your master betrayed the ancient gods and ancient immortals. I didn't expect you to betray the ancient gods and ancient immortals as well, Hall Master Chu Jun said coldly. Boom! The startling Sky Staff's aura was boundless. It rose into the air and was extremely domineering. With the support of Heaven's equal Monkey King, the two of them actually unleashed the aura of the Taigu Emperor. Yen Ao raised 2 fingers and 5 swords flew out. It was as if the Yen Emperor had descended. Whoosh! Yen Yunbei disappeared without a trace. A pair of eyes pierced through the void and stared at the two. Chu Jun and Chu Su could sense Yen Yunbei's aura, but they couldn't sense his exact location. The current crazed manor wasn't a place that could be trampled on. Chu Jun stared at Yi Qinghan and snorted. Crazed manner really refined the heavenly medicine. You guys are extraordinarily daring. Yi Qinghan sneered and said quietly, what's the big deal about refining the heavenly medicine? I'm going to refine your mask sooner or later. I want to see what kind of dirty face is hiding under it. Chu Jun's aura burst forth and the sword in his hand was unsheathed. It was definitely the sword of the Taigu Emperor. This person's strength was definitely much stronger than the 12 immemorial emperors. However, the stone tablet on Sky Ascension Peak did not have this name. Yi Qinghan could not help but suspect the true identity of this person. You don't have a chance. That's it. Chu Jun released his aura, and a powerful aura spread out in all directions. The experts of the Kuang Mansion couldn't even open their eyes. Roar! Chitian Monkey King roared as the startling Emperor's staff in his hand soared into the sky. A domineering murderous aura filled the air as he clashed with Chu Jun hum. The spear of destruction in Chu Shuqian's hand trembled, and everything within 10,000 miles collapsed. The mark of destruction locked onto Yi Qinghan. Kill Yi Qinghan and destroy his foundation. Leave the rest to me. Chu Jun said coldly. Whoosh! Roar. The myriad laws of heaven and earth howled, and the might of the gods surged, crushing the sun, moon, mountains, and rivers. A powerful aura appeared. The ancient heavenly emperor had arrived. The ancient heavenly emperor was of the ancient god and ancient immortal lineage, but he was a variable. No one knew which side he would take. Perhaps he would be on his own. Chu Jun's expression changed under his mask, and he pointed his sword at the ancient heavenly emperor. The ancient heavenly emperor was wearing a Master God battle robe and holding an immemorial Master God weapon. He slowly sat on a tall mountain. The Master God weapon in his hand was a compass that could strengthen his divine will. The immemorial Master God Defense Emperor robe could withstand the Taigu Emperor's attacks. The ancient heavenly emperor gently spun the compass and played with it leisurely. He looked down at everyone with incomparable majesty. Chu Jun's expression turned ugly. He didn't expect the ancient heavenly emperor to come at this time. Ancient heavenly emperor, are you thinking of betraying your ancestors? Chu Jun rebuked angrily. The ancient heavenly emperor smiled and replied, I don't want to, and I can't bear the responsibility. Chu Jun took a deep breath and pointed at Chitian Monkey King. If you don't want to betray your ancestors, then attack. Don't leave a single one alive. The ancient heavenly emperor sneered and said disdainfully, who do you think you are? Whether or not I betray my ancestors is not up to you. You have no right to interfere with my will. Chu Jun had no choice. It wasn't that easy for him to kill the ancient heavenly emperor. The ancient heavenly emperor alone was equivalent to 2 Taigu emperors. It wouldn't be difficult for him and Chu Su to join forces to kill the ancient heavenly emperor. However, if he were to attack alone, he might have a chance of defeating the ancient heavenly emperor. So you're here to help the crazed manor? Chu Jun asked coldly. The ancient heavenly emperor laughed and looked down at the battlefield. He said quietly, I'm not interested. I'm here to see the face under your mask. Satisfy my curiosity, and I'll leave now. Crack. Crack. Chu Jun was so angry that he clenched his fists. The ancient heavenly emperor was too difficult to deal with. You're courting death. Chu Jun shouted angrily. At this time, Yi Qinghan was relaxed. The ancient heavenly emperor had inexplicably pestered Chu Jun, making him helpless. It was unrealistic for Chu Su to defeat the entire crazed manor alone. The ancient heavenly emperor looked unmoved. He said calmly, so what if I'm courting death? There are still people who can kill me. The flame ancestor has been revived, and the primordial yin-yang immortal emperor has returned. However, you're not one of them. The ancient heavenly emperor had ruined all of Chu Jun's plans. Don't fight me. Be careful. The flame ancestor's backup plan will devour you whole. The ancient heavenly emperor looked at Chu Jun's angry eyes and reminded him coldly. Chu Jun took a deep breath. His wise eyes flickered. He asked in a low voice, have I offended you before? Ha 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 ha, the ancient heavenly emperor laughed loudly, causing the void to rumble. You only know now that you've offended me. How did my father die? How did my mother die? Can you give me a reasonable explanation? Whoosh! The ancient heavenly emperor was so angry that he laughed. He stood up and stared at Chu Jun. Chu Jun frowned. Many things had happened during the war between the ancient divine general and the flame tribe. It was hard to explain. During the early stages of the war, the ancient heavenly emperor was born, but almost no one knew about it. Therefore, when the war ended, many people were confused about the ancient divine general's son. The ancient heavenly emperor had the bloodline of the ancient gods and ancient immortals. There was no doubt about this. However, the ancient heavenly emperor seemed to be very unhappy with Chu Jun. The ancient divine general's tragic death on the battlefield seemed to have been planned. Chu Jun was in charge of Crazed Manor, and no one from Crazed Manor supported the ancient divine general. It would be strange if Chu Jun wasn't responsible. Yi Qinghan looked at the ancient heavenly emperor and thought to himself. If Crazed Manor could join forces with the ancient heavenly emperor, they could form a tripartite balance and occupy the ancient immortal world. With the immortal world as their base and the Dark Moon planet as their last resort, they could definitely contend with the ancient gods and ancient immortals. However, the ancient heavenly emperor was of the ancient divine general bloodline. Whether or not he could trust him was another matter. He didn't dare to take the risk. Chu Su was silent for a long time. Then he said coldly, Ancient Heavenly Emperor, the hatred between you and Chu Jun is still a personal grudge. The most important thing for us now is to destroy this alien planet. Once Crazed Manor is destroyed, this emperor will not interfere with your personal grudge. That has nothing to do with me. If you want to do it, then do it. This emperor will not interfere. The ancient heavenly emperor said coldly. Chu Su was infuriated. Who would dare to act recklessly with an emperor of the 10,000 ages watching from the side? You don't trust this emperor. Then how can this emperor trust you? The ancient heavenly emperor asked coldly. Once you've dealt with Crazed Manor, then you can join forces to deal with me. This emperor can't do anything to you. Chapter 28-27. The ancient heavenly emperor retorted coldly, leaving Chu Shuqian speechless. The Taigu emperor was strong, and Chu Shuqian and the Hall Master were even stronger. However, the ancient heavenly emperor was no pushover. Yi Qinghan smiled but said nothing. He looked at the ancient heavenly emperor and teased, "Dean, why don't we work together and get rid of these two first?" The ancient heavenly emperor looked at Yi Qinghan with disdain. He wouldn't work with Chu Jun, but he wouldn't work with Yi Qinghan either. With the passage of time, he believed that he would be able to suppress Chu Jun. Yi Qinghan smiled and stopped trying to persuade the ancient heavenly emperor. This kind of person was no ordinary person. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan signaled for Crazy Manor to retreat and leave the ancient immortal world. But the ancient heavenly emperor disagreed. The compass in his hand spun, and the void froze. Everything within 10,000 miles was within his divine sense domain. Don't leave today. Stay in the ancient immortal world. The laws of order here are clearly better than those in the undying immortal world. You guys stay here and cultivate. I'll take this place for you, the ancient heavenly emperor said coldly. The ancient heavenly emperor was afraid. If Yi Qinghan and the others left, would the exasperated Chu Jun and Chu Shuqian join forces to attack him? Yi Qinghan frowned. He didn't expect the ancient heavenly emperor to do this. Since the dean wants me to stay, it would be rude of me not to. I just don't know if Senior Chu Jun is willing. Yi Qinghan looked at Chu Jun and asked with an evil smile. Staying in the ancient immortal world for 1,000 years was enough. Crazy Manor could grow a lot stronger. Chu Jun was so angry that he lost his mind. He had no other choice. The 5 remaining Taigu emperors, including the primordial god of space and time, had less than 1,000th of their strength left. He had even killed the ancient heavenly emperor himself. He had really shot himself in the foot. In the current situation, Insane Manor and the ancient heavenly emperor were able to fight them to a draw, while Dao Patrol and Class 1 Hall were able to fight to a draw with the forces of the immortal world. The Yen tribe still had a backup, and if the other 4 Taigu emperors did not appear, Class 1 Hall would be at a disadvantage. If Chu Jun did not agree, the ancient celestial the Arch would definitely join forces with Yi Qinghan. If he agreed, it would be equivalent to giving away the resources of the crazed manor. Chu Shuqian was so angry that he was about to go crazy. He had appeared to kill Yi Qinghan, but Yi Qinghan was right in front of him and yet he could not make a move. Let's retreat first and use the heavenly medicine. The other 4 Taigu emperors will recover their strength within 10,000 years. We'll give the insane manor and ourselves 10,000 years. Don't be rash now. Chu Jun immediately reminded Chu Shuqian when he saw that he was about to lose control. 10,000 years after 10,000 years. Your plan is terrible. Chu Shuqian's eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared at Chu Jun. Chu Jun smiled evilly. Don't worry. Haste makes waste. Once the alien planet's foundation is destroyed, Insane Manor's people will be nothing. Chu Shuqian took a deep breath and snorted coldly to express his dissatisfaction and anger. Then, he turned and left. Yi Qinghan watched the 2 leave and cupped his fists. Thank you for speaking up for me. The ancient celestial the Arch snorted coldly. Don't be in a hurry to thank me. Give me what you owe me. Divine Sense Main God Space, Yen Zhu's heart. Yi Qinghan waved his hand, and Yen Yunbei quickly appeared and entered the immortal world. A day later, Yen Yunbei handed over the main god space to Yi Qinghan. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan handed the main god space to the ancient celestial the Arch and bowed slightly. Dean, please give me some time. I will give you Yen Zhu's heart with both hands. The ancient celestial the Arch kept the main god space and said coldly, then I'll have to trouble you. From today onwards, you will occupy this territory. I will form an alliance with you to occupy more territory. Xiaodi's territory will be the boundary, and we will fight against Class 1 Hall. Time and resources, I will fight for you. Similarly, you will have to fight for me. Yi Qinghan nodded and said, as you wish. Whoosh, the ancient celestial the Arch left as quickly as he came. Yi Qinghan narrowed his eyes as he looked in the direction the ancient celestial arch left. This person is from the ancient celestial arch. Why did he help me again and again? Nominally, he wants Yen Zhu's heart to fight for time and resources. Is that all? Yi Qinghan did not understand. The ancient celestial arch was not a fool. If that was the case, why did he not cooperate with Chu Jun? Could it be that he did not trust him? It was a good thing that he wanted to help Kuang Fu, but there was also a bad thing. The ancient celestial arch had purposely made him trust him and then pulled Kuang Fu's main force into the ancient celestial world to destroy them in one fell swoop. Yen Ao did not understand either. He could not feel the ancient celestial thearcha's hostility. After a long while, Yi Qinghan said in a low voice, "Summon Crazy Mansion's Heaven Crusher Battalion, Crazy Mansion's Ancient Barbarian God of Slaughter, Crazy Mansion's Supreme Tao Assassin Legion, and the Inner Sect's Army. All of them are to enter the ancient immortal world and set up a grand formation. The Tao Assassin Legion is to investigate Class 1 Hall's every move." Yes. Everyone from Kuang Fu started to move. Yi Qinghan had considered the worst possible outcome. Even if the ancient celestial arch played dirty, he still had time to recover most of Kuang Fu's forces. Once they entered the ancient celestial world, they would no longer lack resources. The heaven-conquering camp could form a second team. At that time, Yen Ao and the Chess Saint would each control 5 million troops and hold back the two Taigu emperors. They would still have a chance. Whoosh! More and more troops poured into the ancient celestial world. The 5 million heaven-conquering camp was mobilized. Following closely behind were 300,000 ancient killing god, the Inner Sect Army, the Outer Sect Army, the Supreme Assassin Legion, and the Northern Garrison's private army. Yi Qinghan released the star-twisting vine. The vines wrapped around and stretched for countless miles, heading deep into the ancient celestial world. Whoosh! The multicolored snake was forced out by Yi Qinghan. Use your charisma to mobilize all the snakes in the ancient celestial world. I don't need them to participate in the battle, but if Class 1 Hall's army approaches us, you must inform me immediately, Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice. Don't worry, as long as I'm here, no wild beast will dare to step into our territory. The multicolored snake even dared to swallow the corpse of an emperor. Was there anything it did not dare to do? It would eat as many as it came. The army was mobilized continuously. Its aura could swallow mountains and rivers, shaking the mountains and rivers. Yi Qinghan's fingers were clasped together, and his brows were furrowed. He found Yen Ao and Chess Saint and said bluntly, "Saint, hand over the heaven-conquering camp to Yen Ao. You can build a new heaven-conquering camp with 5 million people. I will order Crazed Mansion to give you the greatest support." After Chess Saint was beaten by Yi Qinghan, he knew when to advance and retreat. Without hesitation, he immediately nodded and said, "Let Yen Ao take over from me." Yi Qinghan patted Chess Saint's shoulder and explained in a deep voice, "Everything is for Crazed Mansion and the lives of countless people. Saint, don't think too much. If we can defeat Class 1 Hall with just us, I won't have to trouble myself to change the commander at the last minute." Chess Saint smiled. There were not many wrinkles at the corner of his eyes. All these years, Crazed Mansion had been cultivating, but he had been nurturing his son. Now, his son was in Crazed Mansion Academy. His chess skills and formation skills were enough to make a military saint blush with shame. After having a son, Chess Saint changed a lot. Chapter 28. The armies of Kuang Manor each guarded one side, but they cooperated with each other. Chess Sage selected 10 million people from the undying immortal world. More than half of these 10 million people might be eliminated, and the death rate would be very high. Whether or not there would be 5 million left would be a problem. The Supreme Assassin Army had just started to cultivate the Assassin Dao diagram when Yan Yunbei brought them deep into the mountains. Yan Ao led the army to guard the front, Di Longtian led the ancient massacre god to the left, and Lu Outyan led the Quang Manor's inner sect and private army to the right. The three armies formed an arc, and once the enemy attacked, the experts would be able to retreat. At this moment, the Hall Master of Class 1 Hall had spent hundreds of years to return to the primal chaos heavenly domain. He climbed all the way to the waist of the mountain. He did not go to the peak of the Sky Ascension Peak. Instead, he slowly walked up and said respectfully, "Son, Chu Jun is here to ask for heavenly medicines to save the primal chaos over God, the primal chaos immortal emperor, 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 and the primal chaos immortal emperor." Chu Jun bowed and didn't raise his head. He silently waited for Heaven Domain's reply. If Heaven Domain allowed it, the heavenly medicine would fly out. If they wanted to take it by force, it would depend on Heaven Domain's attitude. Heaven Domain didn't reply for a long time, as if they didn't agree. Chu Jun clenched his fists and glanced above. No heavenly medicine flew out. The heavenly medicine protected by energy was even more tightly guarded, not giving the experts a chance to take it. An hour later, Chu Jun straightened his back and looked coldly at the sky above Sky Ascension Peak. He then turned to look at the entire primal chaos heavenly domain. It was boundless, but it wasn't connected to the ancient immortal world. It seemed to be in another space-time. Heaven Domain didn't agree. Heaven Domain's heavenly medicine had their own uses. Until now, only one had been leaked. But Chu Jun still killed Jing Tian Emperor, so Heaven Domain should know and didn't want to give the heavenly medicine to Chu Jun. Even if they wanted to, they wouldn't give it to him. Hua! At this moment, yin and yang shone in the sky, and it struck the Heaven Domain's chaos. The primal chaos heavenly domain distorted and gradually took the form of a person. He was dozens of feet tall and incomparably ferocious. The yin and yang around him were gentle, fusing together with the primal chaos heavenly domain. There didn't seem to be any conflict. You even dared to kill Jing Tiandi, who gave you the guts. Today, I won't kill you on account of your father's hard work. Take care of yourself. Go back and let them take it themselves. If you dare to wantonly slaughter the Taigu Emperor again, don't blame me for being impolite. The illusory person's voice was strange. At times, it was firm, and at other times, it was soft and clear. After it finished speaking, it immediately dissipated, and yin and yang returned to the dome. The primordial yin-yang immortal emperor controlled this place. Even if he was no longer here and had left for countless years, a strand of his will could still control this place. Chu Jun sucked in a breath of cold air. Cold sweat dripped from his forehead and fell into the chaos under his mask. Chu Jun accepts the order. Chu Jun bowed and replied in shock. Whoosh! Chu Jun left without even daring to look back. Chu Jun had a father and there weren't many people who could make the primordial yin-yang immortal emperor give him face. It seemed like it was time for Chu Jun's true identity to be revealed. Chu Jun was drenched in sweat as soon as he left the chaos heavenly domain. His eyes were filled with fear. He didn't expect the primordial yin-yang immortal emperor to have such terrifying means. After leaving the ancient immortal world and the chaos heavenly domain for so long, he still knew what he was doing. Autocratic! Autocratic! Chu Jun roared. His eyes were filled with unwillingness. In a flash, he rushed back the way he came. Chu Jun alone couldn't control the ancient immortal world. He was just a puppet. When the primordial yin-yang immortal emperor left the first-class hall and the ancient immortal world, he appointed Chu Jun as the hall master. He thought that he could control everything. However, after killing the Taigu emperor, the primordial yin-yang immortal emperor cut off all his thoughts with a single sentence. There were two people in the world that couldn't be resisted. One relied on his cultivation, the primordial Yin-Yang immortal emperor. The other relied on his combat strength, the number one emperor in the world. No one knew what the Flame Emperor looked like when he met the primordial Yin-Yang immortal emperor. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Chu Jun rushed into the distance. In the blink of an eye, he was 10,000 miles away. However, it wasn't that easy for him to cross the ancient immortal world. In the ancestral land of the Flame Tribe, under the Flame Emperor's tomb, the corpse of the nine-colored Brahma heart gradually twisted and turned into a nine-colored Brahma heart divine flower. After a while, it withered and turned into a seed that fell into the Flame Emperor's mouth. Even if it died, it was willing to die in the Flame Emperor's arms. Even if it disappeared, it was willing to leave a trace in the Flame Emperor's body. From then on, the nine-colored Brahma heart disappeared without a trace. It was just two small tombs. No one cared about it. Back then, the heroes were invincible. Now, there wasn't even a single weed growing in front of the tombs. As time passed, no one came here for many years. Some weeds began to grow in the surroundings. They didn't need much spiritual chi. They only needed a little spiritual chi to grow. Woo woo woo, a large amount of flowers and seeds were blown by the wind and fell into the ancestral land of the Flame Tribe. 100 years later, a huge grassland was formed. Weeds and ancient trees covered the two tombs. From then on, no one remembered that there were two tombs here. Whoosh! Heavy rain poured down. A mountain flood broke out and destroyed the tombs. After the flood, the weeds grew even more luxuriant. In the heavenly branch of the elite hall, the Tao Patrol was furious. It had been 10,000 years. He led more than 300 Supremes of the elite hall to encircle Yi Qinghan and Yan Yunbei and suffered a crushing defeat. Every time he thought of the scene back then, he hated it to the core. Now, the elite hall he trained was even more ferocious. Every person who joined the elite hall would have their ancestors dug out. Once bitten, twice shy. He was really scared. From then on, the status of the natives of the immortal world became even lower. They were completely enslaved. The annual tribute was enough to crush them. However, no one could escape. If they escaped, they would die. If they were caught, they would be punished together. They used the natives to guard the natives. No one wanted to die. Once someone tried to escape, they would immediately report it. These natives were extremely regretful. However, there was no medicine for regret. They didn't choose the crazy manner back then. Now, this was karma. Now, the only hope of the natives was that their sons and grandsons could join the elite hall. Then, their status would rise and they wouldn't even need to pay tribute. Every year, there would be people roaring in excitement because their sons had entered the heavenly branch of the elite hall. However, they didn't know how dangerous it was to join the heavenly branch of the elite hall. They could die at any time. Moreover, there wasn't even a grave. Everything was for survival. These young talents of the elite hall wanted to work harder. Their cultivation improved by leaps and bounds. The instinct to survive could create miracles. Experts sprouted like bamboo shoots after the rain. Super experts were born continuously. In order to train people who could surpass him, the Tao Patrol really put in a lot of effort. He often beat and scolded people. The elite hall members hated him to the core. However, they were also afraid of him to the core. At this time, the crazy manor started to plunder resources. They didn't let go of any resources wherever they went. Some of the assassin army's experts even rushed to the core of the heavenly branch of the elite hall to gather information and plunder resources. Both sides started a fierce battle. Chapter 28-29. Arrogant Manor and Class 1 Hall started fighting for resources and also to train their soldiers. Both sides suffered casualties, especially the newcomers of the Supreme Assassin Legion. They died easily and were deep in the enemy's territory. If they were surrounded, it was possible for the entire squad to be wiped out. However, the people brought by Yi Tong and Lin Mo worked hard to gain the recognition of Crazy Manor. Lin Mo and Yi Tong had to follow them every time they went on a mission. The casualty rate was reduced, but as time passed, the number of deaths increased. The Supreme Assassin Legion was constantly replenished with new blood. In the end, the only ones left were the experts. Yan Yunbei trained these people with all his might. If they didn't work hard now, the casualties would be great on the battlefield. Everyone understood this, so no one complained. Even if Chu Su knew about this, he wouldn't interfere. If he fought every time someone from Crazy Manor came, not only would it be degrading, but it would also be embarrassing. He would be exhausted to death. 1,000 years later, Chu Jun returned. However, his first stop wasn't to return to Class 1 Hall. Instead, he went to 4 places to find the Primordial Immortal Emperor, Primordial Time Over God, and the other 3 Taigu Emperors. From the very beginning, there was no precedent of heavenly medicines being leaked out. They didn't return to the chaotic heavenly domain because they didn't think it was possible to take the heavenly medicines out from there. This time, Chu Jun had actually issued a decree from the Yin-Yang Immortal Emperor asking them to go back and take it. The 4 of them were deeply grateful and thought that Chu Jun had helped them obtain the heavenly medicines. The 4 of them left the ancient immortal world and headed to the primordial chaos heavenly domain. The primordial spacetime sovereign and the others were all heavily injured. Some had even lost their legs, some had lost half their chests, and some had lost both their arms. Their souls had been severely damaged, and their flying speed was extremely slow. By the time they reached the primordial chaos heavenly domain and got the heavenly medicine, it would take at least 5,000 years. Including the recovery time, they still had about 10,000 years. Chu Jun watched the 4 of them leave. He clenched his fists and took a deep breath. At this time, he had no way out. Even if I kill Yi Qinghan and destroy Alien Star, there's no way out. They will inevitably settle the score. Can my father protect me? Chu Jun's sinister eyes flashed with a cold glint. At this moment, he knew that he had gone too far. He was playing with fire. He knew very well why Jing Tiandi had betrayed him. It was because Jing Tiandi had been humiliated by the Dao Patrol. When he killed Jing Tiandi that day, he had already asked Jing Tiandi about it. Moreover, Jing Tiandi had done many heartless things in the past. He had used the Taigu Emperor to fight against the Yen tribe, constantly exhausting the Taigu Emperor's strength. This time, he had caused the death of so many Taigu Emperors and ancient master gods. Now, he had killed one of the remaining 5. When the Taigu Emperor recovered, he would definitely look for him first. How to help Yi Qinghan grow up in these troubled times was a very important matter. Whoosh! Chu Jun's figure flashed, and he spent a few months to return to Class 1 Hall's headquarters. Chu Jun sat on the dragon chair in Class 1 Hall's main hall and watched Milky Way universe quietly. He tapped the dragon chair with his fingertips, and suddenly, a fierce light shone in his eyes. He returned to his bedroom and quickly changed into black robes. He put on a mask and brought out a black box from a hidden compartment in the wall. Whoosh! Chu Jun left Class 1 Hall's headquarters and quietly disappeared without a trace. A few days later, in Yunling Basin. Black robes quietly moved through the forest without a hint of aura. He continuously approached Arrogant Manor's headquarters. Whoosh whoosh! The star-entwining vine gave a warning outside Yi Qinghan's tent, and it quickly alerted Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan's eyes shone brightly. He leaped into the air and charged into the distance. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan quickly found Chu Jun's location based on the star-entwining vine's instructions. He jumped down and appeared in front of Chu Jun. However, at that moment, Chu Jun was dressed in black robes that covered him completely. He had changed his mask, but the terrifying thing was that his gaze had changed. His aura had also changed by a lot. Yi Qinghan stared at Chu Jun and asked in a low voice, "Who are you?" Whoosh! Chu Jun extended his hand and handed the black box to Yi Qinghan. He then said hoarsely, "You don't need to know who I am. In the future, you can recognize me with just one sentence." "What sentence?" Yi Qinghan took the box and felt that it was not heavy. However, he did not trust the person in front of him and asked in a low voice. "In the past, there was an emperor. Today, there is a ruler." Chu Jun said in a low voice. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and stared at Chu Jun. He was a little suspicious of this person's motives. He held the metal box and asked, "What is this?" "Something you need," Chu Jun said straightforwardly. "If you have any other questions, I will answer them all today. It will be difficult for you to see me in the future." Yi Qinghan frowned. At that moment, he did not know that the black-robed person in front of him was Chu Jun. Therefore, he did not know what to ask. Chu Jun's lips curled up slightly under his mask. He reminded in a hoarse voice, "Since you don't know what to ask, I will tell you a few important things. First, there are two people chasing after the alien star. One of them is the primordial yin-yang immortal emperor. As for the second one, you will slowly find out." Yi Qinghan's pupils shrank as he stared at Chu Jun. He thought that this person was the Yen clan's backup. The second important thing is that the primordial spacetime master god and the others have already gone to the primal chaos heavenly domain to retrieve the heavenly medicine. You only have 10,000 years left. The third thing is that you and Yen Yunbei will go to the heaven's forbidden land to save a person. He is the son of Jingtian Emperor. His strength is not weak. Chu Jun killed Jingtian Emperor. He will help you and take revenge. The third thing is that the new Taigu Emperor, Chu Su, has a fatal flaw. Once his initial imprint explodes, his gate of life on his forehead will lose its defense. If it penetrates his gate of life, he will lose half of his life. The initial imprint will also disappear and he will become a useless person. Chu Shi revealed Chu Su's flaw. It had to be said that his methods were cruel. In order to achieve his goal, he would do whatever he wanted. He did not care about the losses. Yi Qinghan was now even more convinced that he was the Yen clan's backup. If he knew that he was Chu Jun, he would probably be stunned. You are the backup left by the Yen ancestor." Yi Qinghan looked at Chu Jun in shock. The person in front of him had reported all the fatal points of Class 1 Hall to him. If he said that he was not the backup left by the Yen ancestor, no one would not believe him. Chu Jun chuckled hoarsely and said softly, "Remember, there was an emperor in the past, and there is a king in the present. In the future, when I say these words, no matter who I am at that time, you must stop attacking without hesitation. The day we meet again will be the day when you and Class 1 Hall reach the final stage of your fight. I will help you." "Who?" Yi Qinghan exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. He bowed and cupped his fists. "Thank you, senior." Whoosh! Chu Jun left. His figure flashed and disappeared without a trace. Yi Qinghan watched him leave and slowly opened the box. His eyes almost popped out. Yi Qinghan looked at the sealed item in the box and was shocked. This was not an ordinary treasure. It was a true supreme treasure. Who is he? Why is this item in his hands? Bang! Yi Qinghan quickly closed the box and rushed back to Crazy Mansion's camp with it. Looking at the box, Yi Qinghan could not calm down for a long time. He did not know what to do with the item in the box. Chapter 28:30. Yi Qinghan looked at the box made of special materials with complicated feelings. He had been searching for this thing for many years, but it was delivered right to his doorstep. After a long time, Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and said, "Invite Yen Ao back." The chess saint will personally take charge of the heaven-conquering camp. Wu shot a figure soared into the sky and charged into the depths of this boundless territory. There was a vast plain in front of a huge mountain range. 5 million soldiers were standing guard. Less than 1,000 miles away, the Kuang Fu inner sect and the ancient god-slaying army were stationed. Yan Ao was training the army and familiarizing himself with the formation laid down by the chess saint. The sky gradually brightened, and a black figure appeared in the heaven-conquering camp. Reporting, Grand Marshal. The Mansion Lord has requested for you to return for an important matter. The army will be returned to the sacred prince. The black-clothed messenger reported respectfully. Yan Ao was stunned, but in less than a moment, the chess saint arrived at the camp under the protection of an expert from the heaven-conquering camp. The chess saint took charge of the army once again, but he wasn't as crazy and stubborn as before. He had a new obsession. Moreover, the heaven-conquering camp was grateful to him and had a crazy faith in him. However, they knew what their ultimate faith was. Whoosh. Whoosh. Yan Ao rushed through the air and returned to the camp of the heaven-conquering camp's older generation in about 2 hours. After a moment, Yan Ao arrived at Yi Qinghan's camp. He pushed the door open and saw Yi Qinghan sitting on a chair and staring at a box. He asked curiously, "Boss, why are you looking for me?" Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed as he pointed at the metal box and said, "Open it." Yan Ao didn't hesitate. After opening the box, his heart almost stopped. A huge heart appeared in front of him. Although it was sealed, it was still beating. The flame ancestor's heart. This. Boss, where did you find it? Yan Ao was extremely excited. He couldn't wait to hug Yi Qinghan and kiss him. Yi Qinghan smiled and shook his head. He said softly, "I didn't find it. Someone sent it to me at night." Yan Ao's pupils shrunk as he asked, "Who sent it?" "A backup plan laid down by the flame ancestor." Yi Qinghan sighed softly. He shook his head and replied, "I don't know. That person was wearing a mask. He only said one thing to me, there was an emperor in the past, and there is a ruler today." Yan Ao looked at Yi Qinghan in shock. He did not understand where this expert had come from. He purposely exposed himself to the star-twisting vine. Otherwise, it would have been very difficult for me to find him. Moreover, he told me that the immemorial Yin-Yang immortal emperor and another person were tracking the alien star. However, he didn't say anything. He also told me that the new Taigu emperor in front of Chu Su had a fatal weakness. When he activated the initial imprint, the Taigu emperor would be crippled. Moreover, he asked me to save the star-twisting vine's son. He's in the forbidden area behind Heaven's Mountain. Yi Qinghan said in a low voice. Yan Ao immediately became vigilant. He reminded Yi Qinghan in a low voice, "Did he purposely express his goodwill to lure you to Class 1 Hall's heaven?" Yi Qinghan nodded his head and replied, "This is also a problem that I am considering. Therefore, I am hesitating whether or not I should save the star-twisting vine's son. I heard that this person is very strong. After all, he is the Taigu Emperor's son. He will be of great help." Yan Ao became silent. This matter was of great importance. He did not dare to take the risk. Yi Qinghan pondered for a long time. He used his hand to touch his forehead. He felt a splitting headache. Right now, he could not differentiate between enemy and ally. Not many people could see through Chu Jun's plan. Yi Qinghan could not guess that the person who gave him the heart was Chu Jun. "Go and look for Brother Yan. Tell him to pay attention to the movements of Class 1 Hall's Heavens branch. If there is an opportunity, I will go in with him. How can you catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's den?" After a long time, Yi Qinghan finally stood up and said in a deep voice, "Also, take this heart with you. Refine it." Yan Ao was shocked. He asked, "Didn't you promise the heart to the ancient heavenly emperor?" Yi Qinghan's bewitching eyes flashed with a strange light. He said faintly, "This person's strength is too terrifying. I no longer dare to trust him. Once you refine the heart, your strength will transcend. By then, his attitude will no longer be important. Besides, he still needs us to help him stall for time to deal with Class 1 Hull. He will not fall out with me." Yan Ao cupped his fist and said excitedly, "Thank you, boss. What are you thanking me for?" "Take the heart and get out of here," Yi Qinghan said bluntly. Yan Ao grinned like a big boy. He hugged the metal box and rushed out of Yi Qinghan's tent like a wisp of smoke. He went straight to the Assassin Legion's main camp. At this moment, Yan Yunbei was still training the Assassin Legion on how to conceal themselves better and how to instantly assassinate an expert. Yan Ao quickly ran over and whispered to Yan Yunbei, "Big brother Yan, boss wants you to put all your focus on Class 1 Hall's movements in heaven. If there's a chance, he wants you to go to the mountain behind heaven to save someone. I heard that it's shocking Heavenly Emperor's son." Yan Yunbei nodded. He then said to Yi Tong, Lin Mo, and the others, "Lead the Assassin Legion to the vicinity of Class 1 Hall's heaven. If they make any movements, inform me immediately." Whoosh! Yi Tong and Lin Mo quickly led an elite team to the vicinity of Class 1 Hall's heaven. These 20 people were all the new generation of Supremes of Class 1 Hall. They were very familiar with Class 1 Hall's heaven. However, on the second night, Class 1 Hall's experts left in full force, leaving behind only a group of juniors. The others all left under the guidance of the patrollers. They left without any warning. Furthermore, they did not leave in the direction of Crazy Mansion. When Yi Qinghan received the news, he became even more puzzled. "The person who gave me Flame Ancestor's heart is a higher-up of Class 1 Hall. He's the one who mobilized the experts of Class 1 Hall's heaven. Otherwise, this would be too much of a coincidence." Yi Qinghan's eyes shone. He slowly stood up, put on his mask, and walked out of the tent. At that moment, Yan Yunbei was already waiting outside. Heavenly Monkey King also came. He held shocking heavenly staff and waited silently. Yi Qinghan looked at Heavenly Monkey King and could not help but nod. It was good that Heavenly Monkey King followed them. At least, they would be safer. If the three of them worked together, they could escape unscathed even if they ran into the Taigu Emperor. "Let's go. Our destination is Class 1 Hall's heaven. Let's save shocking Heavenly Emperor's son." Whoosh! 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 The three of them worked together and flew through the air. Their speed became faster and faster as they rushed toward Class 1 Hall under the cover of night. At that moment, the patrollers did not know why Chu Jun gave such an order. He actually wanted him to go to a place that had never been explored before to search for resources. He even wanted to take away all the experts of heaven. However, he was truly afraid of Chu Jun. Hence, he did not dare to disobey any of Chu Jun's orders. The patrollers led a large group of experts into the depths of the forest and mountains. At that moment, Yi Qinghan led Yan Yunbei and Heavenly Monkey King past Class 1 Hall's heaven and arrived at the back of the mountain. The back of the mountain was quiet. There was not even a shadow. There was only a deep cave, a huge waterfall, and a stream. Chapter 28-31. The back of the mountain was quiet. There was not even a shadow. There was only a deep cave, a huge waterfall, and a stream. The rest of the cave was ancient and some of them were 30 to 40 feet thick. The forest was dense and birds were chirping. However, there was not a single powerful spiritual beast. The cave was obviously sealed by a formation. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and said to Yan Yunbei, "You guard the formation. Our heavenly monkey brother will go in to save the people. If there are any experts, alert us immediately." Yan Yunbei nodded. His figure flashed and he flew into the sky. However, there were no experts within a radius of tens of thousands of miles. Yi Qinghan wore a mask and held a long saber as he approached the entrance of the cave. He slashed at the seal and shattered it. Hua! Yi Qinghan and Heavenly Monkey King entered the cave one after another. The cave was dark and there was no light. The two of them could see through their eyes. The huge cave extended into the depths of the cave. Cold air filled the air. If someone was placed here, they would not be able to withstand it. You guard the entrance of the cave. I will go in to check if there are any traps. Yi Qinghan waved his finger at the entrance of the cave. Heavenly Monkey King did not refute. The three of them had to split up properly. Otherwise, they would be finished if there were any traps. Duh. Yi Qinghan walked slowly. His footsteps echoed in the cave. After a few turns, they finally found two people in a pitch-black cave. They were both chained up, and there was a coffin at their feet. The coffin was definitely heavy, and this could be considered a form of torture. Yi Qinghan had not seen Jing Tiandi before. However, he could guess which one was his son. However, who was the other person? The person who gave him the heart did not warn him. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed as he slashed at the chains. Boom! Hua! Sparks flew everywhere from the iron chain. The blade didn't cut the iron chain, but sparks flew everywhere. He saw the faces of the two people. Their clothes were ragged, but one of the men was very tall, much taller than a human. His face didn't look like a human's. His ears and eyes were very big, but he looked very honest. That person was also awakened by Yi Qinghan's attack. He opened his tired eyes and looked at Yi Qinghan. His eyes were deep and shimmering. The other was a human. He looked like an expert as well. At this moment, he raised his head to look at Yi Qinghan, his eyes filled with surprise. This is a star iron chain, refined using several stars. Ordinary weapons would have a hard time opening it. Who are you? Why did you come to save us? Jing Tiandi's son asked in a deep voice. Yi Qinghan snorted. He did not believe that the astral chains could not be opened. Whoosh! With a wave of his hand, Yi Qinghan kept his saber back into his body. Then, he leaped towards the chains. Roar! Roar! The dragon tiger mask roared. Yi Qinghan's veins popped out on his arms. The blue flames and the anti-order laws wrapped around the iron chain, causing it to distort. Clang! Bang! The iron chain broke. Boom! Jing Tiandi's son was brought down to the ground by the coffin, and he fell heavily to the ground. The other middle-aged man looked at Yi Qinghan in surprise. His eyes were full of shock. He never thought that someone could break the two iron chains with their bare hands. Hua! Yi Qinghan's figure flashed and pulled on the man's iron chain, shattering it. Soon, Yi Qinghan shattered the iron chain under their feet. After completely destroying it, he said coldly, "This is not the place to talk. Come with me quickly." Hua! Yi Qinghan quickly rushed out of the cave. Jing Tiandi's son and the other man quickly followed. They had not seen the sun for many years, so their eyes hurt. They quickly blocked the sunlight with their hands. Yi Qinghan glanced at the two and said quietly, "These two seem to have been locked here for a long time. It's definitely not Class 1 Hull's plan. They can be trusted, Brother Yen, Brother Monkey King, let's go." Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Yi Qinghan's figure soared into the air. In the blink of an eye, he rushed out of Class 1 Hull's back mountain. The other four followed closely behind. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared without a trace. A few days later, the two crossed mountains and rivers and entered the heaven-conquering camp in Crazed Manor's territory. Yi Qinghan looked at Jing Tiandi's son and the other man. Looking at their pale faces and deformed wrists and ankles, he knew that he did not save the wrong people. "Tell me who you are," Yi Qinghan asked in a low voice. "Who?" Jing Tiandi's son took a deep breath. His bloodline was the Taigu emperors, so it was easy to tell. He then cupped his fists and said, "Thank you for saving my life. I am Jing Tianju, Jing Tiandi's son. When I find my father, I will definitely repay your kindness." Yi Qinghan stared at Jing Tianju and shook his head. "Your father is already dead. He was killed by Class 1 Hall's Chu Jun. Jing Tiandi's staff art was inherited by my two brothers. Brother Yen promised your father that he would save you. He only knows that you are a hostage, but he doesn't know that you have been locked up and tortured for so many years. Otherwise, he would definitely save you personally." Jing Tianju glared and roared angrily, "Nonsense. My father is one of the 12 immemorial emperors. He is too weak compared to Chu Jun. At most, he is 3 levels stronger. How can he kill my father?" Boom! Jing Tianju was too angry. He reached out and lifted Yi Qinghan up. Yi Qinghan clenched his fist and grabbed Jing Tianju's arm, almost breaking his wrist. "Calm down. Jing Tiandi's staff has already been taken by Brother Monkey King. Why would I lie to you? Even if I did, Jing Tiandi's staff wouldn't lie to you," Yi Qinghan said in a low voice. Whine. Heaven's equal Monkey King took out Jing Tiandi's staff. The staff's aura surged into the clouds and was awakening. "Ju, my master is already dead. He was killed by Chu Jun. They are not lying. My master really didn't know that you would be tortured. He thought that since you were a hostage, they would treat you well. I didn't expect Chu Jun to be so ruthless." Jing Tiandi's staff was the Taigu Emperor's weapon. Its weapon spirit wasn't dead. At this moment, it was shining brightly. "No!" Jing Tianju roared in indignation. His aura surged into the clouds and shook the ground. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and sighed. "My condolences, Brother Ju." Jing Tiandi was humiliated because of the Emperor's legacy. He was probably afraid that you would be humiliated as well. That's why he asked Brother Yen for help. He went to the chaotic heavenly domain to get the heavenly medicine. Instead, he angered Chu Jun and killed him. "I'll go and kill him." Jing Tianju's ears twitched. His eyes were burning with hatred. Boom! Yi Qinghan's avatar condensed and pressed down on Jing Tianju's shoulder. He said in a low voice, "Even your father wasn't his match. What makes you think you can? The most important thing now is for you to recover your strength and join forces with us. What's the difference between going to Class 1 Hall and going to your death? Wouldn't your father have died for nothing?" Jing Tianju was too weak. He was pressed to the ground by Yi Qinghan. After a long time, Jing Tianju finally calmed down. Yi Qinghan let go of Jing Tianju and looked at another middle-aged man with disheveled hair. Perhaps he was too tired over the years and looked a little old. He should have been very young before he was captured. "Who are you? Why were you captured there? Are you also the son of the Taigu Emperor?" Yi Qinghan asked in a low voice. "He's Long Xiaoyao, a fanatic of the Flame Emperor. Class 1 Hall took a long time to capture him," Jing Tianju explained. That person immediately nodded and said, "Thank you for saving me." "Ha ha ha. I thought I was going to die there." "Long Xiaoyao? A fanatic of the Flame Emperor?" Yi Qinghan glanced at him. It's good to know his identity. People of unknown origins can't be trusted. Chapter 28-32. After saving Jing Tianju and Long Xiaoyao, Yi Qinghan fell into deep thought. Yi Qinghan didn't know who had given him the heart, but he was sure that it was a higher-up from Class 1 Hall. Otherwise, who could casually transfer away the road patrol and other experts? The male rabbit's feet are clumsy, while the female rabbit's eyes are blurry. How can you tell if I'm male or female? Now, Yi Qinghan couldn't tell who was the good guy and who was the bad guy. Class 1 Hall's experts had helped him get the Yen ancestor's heart. With such a treasure supporting Yen Ao, his realm might even surpass the Taigu emperors. If that higher-up from Class 1 Hall wasn't a backup plan set up by the Yen tribe, then he was definitely a lunatic, and a terrifying one at that. From what I know, the elders of Class 1 Hall's headquarters are all heavily injured. Only Chu Jun and the new Taigu emperor, Chu Shuqian, are left. However, that person told me about Chu Shuqian's fatal weakness. Then, there's only Chu Jun left. He's the hall master of Class 1 Hall, and he's in charge of exterminating the Yen tribe. He hates me to the core. How can he be a backup plan set up by the Yen tribe? Yi Qinghan leaned back in his chair and pressed his fingers against his forehead. He kept on rubbing. Even if his brain was as big as the universe, he still couldn't understand the current situation. A few months later, the road patrol brought a large group of experts back to Class 1 Hall's Heaven branch. When he saw that the seal in the forbidden area at the back of the mountain had been broken, and the 2 people inside had been rescued, he collapsed onto the ground. The road patrol was terrified. Jing Tianju and Long Xiaoyao had been rescued. Putting aside Long Xiaoyao's cultivation, Jing Tianju was the son of the immemorial Emperor Jingtian. He was the second-generation successor. What was the difference between his bloodline and the Emperor Jingtian's? Even if he had not cultivated for countless years, his combat prowess was still more terrifying than that of a Dao patroller. That was his innate bloodline. More importantly, when Jing Tianju was born, there was no enmity between the ancient gods and the Yen clan. Therefore, he did not inherit Jing Tianju's hatred. He himself did not hate the Yen clan and was even friendly with them. If such a person was rescued by Yi Qinghan, how much trouble would Class 1 Hall be in? Long Xiaoyao was a fervent fan of the Yen Emperor during the primordial age. Back then, the Yen Emperor was at his peak, while he was just an ignorant youth. However, his cultivation wasn't bad. After the Yen Emperor died in battle, Long Xiaoyao's fighting strength reached its peak. His dragon's roar blade had killed many divine generals and immortal generals, and assassinated many middle-ranking members of Class 1 Hall. The Dao Patrol thought of the torture the 2 of them had suffered all these years, and then thought of their impending revenge. He did not dare to hesitate any longer. He turned around and charged into the void. Class 1 Hall's main hall was like a floating palace in the Milky Way, majestic and vast. Chu Jun sat in the main hall and watched as the Dao Patrol knelt on the ground and begged for forgiveness. However, he did not show much emotion. I am also responsible for this matter. I have underestimated Yi Qinghan's courage, and I have also underestimated the crazed manner's intelligence. He actually managed to find Jing Tianju. Chu Jun was in a good mood, which was rare for him. He waved his hand and said, "You can go back first. Speed up your training and become a fighting force within 10,000 years. When the other elders return, it will be the day of the crazed manner's destruction." The Dao Patrol shuddered. He was prepared to be punished today, but he did not expect Chu Jun to be so easy to talk to. "Thank you, sir. Thank you for your understanding." The Dao Patrol exhaled deeply and respectfully left the main hall. The Great Strength Hall fell into a dead silence. After a while, Chu Shuqian walked out and snorted coldly, "You are indeed responsible for this matter. You actually made the Dao Patrol send out all his experts to train. What a fool." The Dao Patrol's gloomy eyes stared at Chu Shuqian and said, "I also want heaven to become a fighting force as soon as possible so that we can get rid of the crazed manner and Yi Qinghan. Don't forget, I killed Jing Tianju. I don't want Jing Tianju to escape from there. Taigu Emperor, you don't understand my efforts. Will Jing Tianju betray the ancient gods and ancient immortals and become a fighting force for the crazed manor? Chu Shuqian asked coldly. Humph. Chu Jun sneered, if his father dared to betray him, his son will definitely do the same. I will prove to Heaven Region that I killed Jing Tianju for a reason, not for my own selfish desires. It doesn't matter if you can understand or not. I have a clear conscience. Chu Jun's plan was flawless. He let Yi Qinghan save Jing Tianju and use Jing Tianju to fight against Class 1 Hull. When the time came, both sides would suffer, and Jing Tianju would help Crazed Manor. Jing Tianju and his son betrayed Class 1 Hull at the same time. The primal chaos heavenly realm would have nothing to say. They would even praise him for his decisiveness. The Taigu Emperor couldn't be killed, but could the traitor Taigu Emperor be killed? A cold light flashed in Chu Jun's eyes. He let out a sigh of relief at the perfect execution of his plan. Chu Shuqian, the former Taigu Emperor, would never have thought that Jing Tianju was saved by Yi Qinghan. He also didn't know that Chu Jun had exposed his fatal weakness to Yi Qinghan. Once the war started, Chu Shuqian would definitely be attacked by Crazed Manor. He would definitely be the first Taigu Emperor to die. It wasn't that he wasn't strong, but that he had a weakness. Crazed Manor would sacrifice themselves to kill him. Chu Shuqian didn't know that he only had 10,000 years left to live. When Crazed Manor and Class 1 Hull fought again, it would be his death. In Crazed Manor's headquarters, Yan Ao was refining Yan Zhu's heart. As long as the heart was refined and fused, Yan Ao's fighting strength would be terrifying. He might even surpass the 12 immemorial emperors. He might even be able to suppress Chu Jun. At this time, Jing Tianju had used up a lot of resources and was recovering rapidly. Long Xiaoyao had been like this for his entire life. The countless years of imprisonment had drained a lot of their source energy. It would take a long time for them to recover their peak fighting strength. However, Yi Qinghan wasn't alive at this time. Yan Zhu's heart had been given to Yan Ao. How could the ancient heavenly emperor not flip the heavens when he found out? Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's figure flashed through the air and rushed towards the ancient heavenly emperor's territory. Whoosh! After several days of flying, Yi Qinghan landed outside a huge tribe. This was the ancient heavenly emperor's camp, which also included Gu Jiutian's followers. The Taijiang celestial tribe was also here. The ancient heavenly emperor seemed to have expected Yi Qinghan's appearance. He slowly stepped out of a palace and came to a valley in the distance. Yi Qinghan stood in the valley and waited silently. "Why are you looking for me?" the ancient heavenly emperor asked coldly. Yi Qinghan turned around and cupped his fists. Other than the Yan Zhu's heart, what else is the headmaster interested in? I can try my best to get it for you. I'm interested in heavenly medicine. Can you get it? The ancient heavenly emperor asked coldly. Yi Qinghan's eyes twitched. If that thing could be obtained so easily, he wouldn't have taken a heavenly medicine that day. Ahem, headmaster, you must be joking. I can't get it. Yi Qinghan laughed awkwardly. The ancient heavenly emperor stared at Yi Qinghan and asked, "Are you not going to give me the Yan Zhu's heart?" Yi Qinghan didn't want to go back on his word. However, he hadn't found the Yan Zhu's heart that day. Under the expedient of the situation, the ancient heavenly emperor had allowed him to have it. Now that he had found it, how could he let it go? No, I just don't understand. You're a divine general successor. You definitely don't fit in with the Yan Zhu's bloodline, especially an organ like the heart. You can't refine it at all. Why are you making things difficult for me? Yi Qinghan asked in a low voice. The ancient heavenly emperor asked indifferently, "Who told you that I can't refine the Yan Zhu's organ? Do you really think I let you have it because I couldn't refine my right arm? Isn't that too much of a coincidence? Did I just throw it in front of you?" Yi Qinghan's pupils shrank. He took a deep breath and asked in astonishment, "Back then? Back then, you did it on purpose?" The ancient heavenly emperor nodded silently. Chapter 28-33. The ancient heavenly emperor nodded, but Yi Qinghan was shocked. Even if he wanted to break the heavens, he would never have thought that the ancient heavenly emperor would be his backup. "Back then, I didn't dare to tell you. You were young, and your battle prowess was mediocre. That's why I made things difficult for you on the surface and helped you in the dark. I knew that you would come to the ancient emperor academy, and I also knew that you would be rejected by Oyanghua. I also acquiesced, but I didn't want you to join the ancient emperor academy, so I purposely gave you the flame ancestor's arm in the hopes that your battle prowess would be enough to scare the big shots." Yi Qinghan was confused, and he looked at the ancient heavenly emperor in shock. "Then, why do you want the flame ancestor's heart? You're a divine general's successor, so why are you helping the flame clan?" Yi Qinghan asked. The ancient heavenly emperor put his hands behind his back and looked up at the sky. He took a deep breath, and an ancient aura spread out. "Back then, my father participated in the war between Class 1 Hall and the Flame Clan because he had no choice. The ancient families were expelled from the ancient immortal world, and their patriarchs were killed. My father had no choice but to participate in the war. He attacked a tribe of the Flame Clan several times and often fought with a princess of the tribe. The other party knew that my father didn't want to fight, so they dragged it out for a long time to buy time for their people. That princess is the younger sister of the Flame Clan's number 1 emperor, and she is my mother. In other words, the number 1 emperor in the world is my belief, and he's also my uncle. Do you think I can't refine the flame ancestor's heart and right arm?" The ancient heavenly emperor looked straight at Yi Qinghan and asked coldly. Yi Qinghan's hair stood on end. So there was such a piece of information in the ancient secret history. If the ancient heavenly emperor hadn't said it himself, who would have believed it? "Back then, when my mother gave birth to me, she chose to commit suicide in order to protect my identity. My father knew that he had no other choice, so he handed me over to the Divine Will Master God. The Divine Will Master God handed me over to an old man, and the old man took me and the Divine Will Master God's daughter to escape. He joined the battle with the Divine Will Master God with the determination to die, and hoped that Class 1 Hall wouldn't bring us back to continue fighting." The ancient heavenly emperor sank into his memories, and the scenes from back then appeared in his mind. "Before he died, he told my uncle about my whereabouts. Even though my uncle was unwilling to kill him, he insisted on dying and chose to accompany my mother. My uncle personally sent him off. Later, my uncle found me when I was 8 years old and told me the truth. He told me to set up a backup plan for the Yen clan, take revenge for my parents, and fight for a chance at survival for the Yen clan." Yi Qinghan understood that the ancient heavenly emperor was the flaming emperor's trump card. His words were imprinted on my soul. Later on, I married a divine will inheritance and gave birth to Jiutian. Then, I stole her foundation. Jiutian hated me to the core. I had no other choice. She also knew the result. She didn't refuse. Everything was for the sake of survival. That's why after countless years, even though I became the emperor of all ages, I endured it. However, 10,000 years later, it will be the decisive battle. There's no need for me to hide it anymore." The ancient heavenly emperor's eyes were filled with a cold glint. Yi Qinghan frowned and asked, "What about the divine will inheritance?" "She was killed by my uncle. She joined forces with my father and couldn't defeat my uncle. However, she managed to severely injure my uncle's foundation. Otherwise, when the Yin Emperor led his 5 million army to fight against my uncle's 3 million army, it would be hard to say who would die. Do you think he's called the number 1 emperor in the world for nothing? If he ascends to the top and becomes the emperor, what Taigu emperor? They're all ants." The ancient heavenly emperor's blood boiled. It was a perverted belief and persistence. The ancient heavenly emperor was an absolute actor. He had kept Class 1 Hall in the dark for countless years. Even now, no one suspected that he had anything to do with the Yen clan. However, he was a die-hard fan of the Flaming Emperor. Yi Qinghan was getting more and more confused. Since the Flaming Emperor had restrained so many people from the Taigu Emperor, why was the Flame Ancestor's corpse dismembered? Then why was the Flame Ancestor defeated when he joined forces with Lord Liang Emperor? Yi Qinghan asked curiously. The ancient heavenly emperor shook his head and said in a low voice, "After my uncle came to find me, he went to Crying Ghost Ridge to fight the Yin Emperor. That battle was also his final battle. He damaged 30% of his foundation. It's understandable that he died at the hands of the Yin Emperor. I once entered Crying Ghost Ridge and saw my uncle's corpse." At this point, the ancient heavenly emperor's eyes shone brightly. His eyes flashed with the imposing aura of the iron bone body that stood proudly even in death. He held back the feeling in his heart. Since then, my uncle never replied to me. Therefore, no one knows why the Flame Ancestor and the Liang Emperor were defeated. However, based on my guess, Class 1 Hall must have a big backup plan. Therefore, after I confess to you today, you must not be presumptuous and tell anyone. I still have to play a key role. If I can attack Chu Jun or severely injure the backup plan of Class 1 Hall, then we still have hope of victory, the ancient heavenly emperor said in a deep voice. Whoosh! Hiss! Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and clenched his fists. He bowed and said, "Dean, I'm sorry. I got the heart. However, I didn't know about it and let Yen Ao refine it." The ancient heavenly emperor's eyes flashed. He then shook his head and said in a hoarse voice, "Forget it. Yen Ao is the backup plan of the Flame Ancestor. It's fate that he got the Flame Ancestor's heart." Yi Qinghan immediately relaxed. He was afraid that the ancient heavenly emperor wouldn't let go of the Flame Ancestor's heart. The heart. I suspect that it was given to me by the higher-ups of Class 1 Hall. That person gave me the heart and told me about Chu Su's fatal weakness. He even mobilized the patrols and gave me a chance to save the ancient heavenly emperor's son, Jing Tianjue. Yi Qinghan frowned and voiced his doubts. The ancient heavenly emperor might know something. The ancient heavenly emperor was stunned. He shook his head and said in a low voice, "Back then, each of us left a backup plan. No one knows who the backup plan is. Just like how the Flame Ancestor didn't know about the backup plan left by my uncle didn't have the time to ask about it. Therefore, it's not strange for Class 1 Hall to have the Flame Ancestor as a backup plan. However, you can't believe it completely. Don't tell him anything." Yi Qinghan immediately nodded. This matter was more than shocking. No matter how strong the immemorial Yin-Yang Immortal Emperor and the Crown Prince were, they couldn't have expected the ancient heavenly emperor to be a variable. "Go back and pretend that you never saw me. When we meet again in the future, we'll still be partners. Moreover, it's a partnership that can break at any time. Give the Crown Prince some hope. He'll try to rope me in." The ancient heavenly emperor's eyes flashed fiercely. Yi Qinghan bowed slightly and slowly retreated. The dark clouds in the sky dispersed. The power of the anti-order Dharma and logos shrouded the sky, preventing anyone from spying on them. Furthermore, given the ancient celestial emperor's cultivation, no one would be able to eavesdrop on their conversation. However, Yi Qinghan remained vigilant. Whoosh. Whoosh. Yi Qinghan felt unprecedentedly relaxed. He was afraid that he wouldn't have any helpers. Now that the backup plan of the Flame Ancestor had surfaced, even if there was only one, he could relax. At least he wouldn't be fighting alone. Chapter 28-34. After returning to the camp, Yi Qinghan grinned. Now that Yan Ao had obtained the Yan ancestor's heart and the ancient heavenly emperor had become their backup, Quang Manor's burden was lifted. The strongest emperor under the heavens, you've never disappointed me. Even though you've been dead for countless years, your backup plan is still on the surface, but no one can see through it. You're the first person that I, Yi Qinghan, admire. Yan ancestor, oh Yan ancestor, why did you lose? I really don't understand. I hope that your backup plan will give me a surprise other than Yan Ao. Yi Qinghan leaned back on the chair and closed his eyes, thinking about the backup plan that the Yan ancestor had laid down. Was the person who intimidated Chu Jun that you're the ancient heavenly emperor? If not, then that person is the backup plan of the Yan ancestor. With the addition of the Taigu emperor, Quang Manor's chances of victory will be higher. Yi Qinghan thought. Now, he had to consider the immemorial Yin-Yang immortal emperor as an enemy. With such a domineering existence, even if the Yan emperor claimed the throne, both sides would suffer losses. Moreover, the Yan emperor had already fallen, and he didn't claim the throne. If the immemorial Yin-Yang immortal emperor makes a move on me, Yi Qinghan realized that he would never be able to relax. He had a helper, but he also had a strong enemy. The immemorial Yin-Yang immortal emperor might not be hostile to the Yan clan. The one who wants to exterminate the Yan clan is only Chu Jun. The immemorial Yin-Yang immortal emperor's real target is the alien star. I'm just a bystander. Yi Qinghan licked the corner of his mouth with the tip of his tongue. His eyes flashed as he clenched his fists. He took a deep breath and leaned back on the chair, thinking about how to deal with the immemorial Yin-Yang immortal emperor. It would be best if they could negotiate. If they couldn't, not to mention whether they could break the inheritance of the ancient gods and ancient immortals, they wouldn't even be able to defeat this person. I need resources, heavenly medicine. Yi Qinghan slowly stood up. Only heavenly medicine could help him now. The domineering existence was chasing after the alien star, and the alien star couldn't help him. Qua. Yi Qinghan stepped out of the camp and came to where Jing Tianju was. He was still trying his best to heal his injuries. Ju, if you want revenge, you can't rely on cultivation alone. You know Chu's strength. Yi Qinghan reminded Jing Tianju. Jing Tianju woke up, his eyes filled with anger as he growled, didn't he just eat one more heavenly medicine than me? Otherwise, how can he be so strong? If I have heavenly medicine, I can't. Yi Qinghan was stunned. He didn't expect Chu Jun to have eaten a heavenly medicine before, and a complete one at that. Jing Tianju looked at Yi Qinghan's expression and knew that Yi Qinghan didn't understand Chu Jun. You are very familiar with Chu Jun. Who is he? How does he know heavenly medicine? Yi Qinghan asked curiously. Jing Tianju took a deep breath and said angrily, a shameless brat. I know he's the son of an immemorial emperor, Chu Jun, the heir apparent of an immemorial emperor. Chu Jun and heir apparent were fake words in the immemorial era. Other than the immemorial Yin-Yang immortal emperor who knew whose son he was, no one else knew. The immemorial Yin-Yang immortal emperor made him a hall master and gave him a heavenly herb. After refining it for him, he became an immemorial emperor. He never showed his face to anyone, so we don't know whose son he is. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed. It seemed like Sheng Yan and the rest were right. It was a fake word. Chu Jun, heir, was a fake name. No one knew what his real name was. Chu Jun. Chu Shijun Xian, Yi Qinghan's eyes twitched when he thought of this name. However, he didn't dare to think about it. Chu Shijun Xian was the Liang Emperor's son. How could he be Chu Jun? Moreover, he had helped him kill the divine general's successor. The Liang Emperor sword had helped the human Tao Emperor Pagoda suppress the Master God weapon. There shouldn't be a problem. However, this joke remained in Yi Qinghan's heart. However, Yi Qinghan quickly reacted and said, "You're the Taigu Emperor's son. Jing Tianju died tragically. Why can't you ask for a heavenly medicine? If the primal chaos heavens were fair, they would definitely satisfy your request." Without the help of a super expert, Jing Tianju could only use half of a heavenly medicine. The other half would be left for crazed manner. After all, it was a cooperation. Jing Tianju was alone, and crazed manner had sent so many people. It was only right for him to contribute some resources. Yi Qinghan made up his mind. He wanted Jing Tianju to go to the primal chaos heavens. Jing Tianju frowned as he looked at Yi Qinghan. He had never thought of going to the primal chaos heavens to ask for a heavenly medicine. Yi Qinghan said indifferently, "Although we're cooperating, without us, you won't be able to take revenge. I think you should give it a try. Go and ask for a heavenly medicine. You have to refine half of it and give the other half to crazed manner." Jing Tianju looked at Yi Qinghan strangely and said unhappily, "Sect Master Yi, you saved my life. I thank you. However, isn't it inappropriate for you to ask me for a heavenly medicine?" Yi Qinghan retorted, "What do you want to thank me with?" "Just a thank you. My crazed manner doesn't have any resources. Even if I help you take revenge, my crazed manner will be wiped out. Is that all I get in return?" Whoosh! Yi Qinghan slowly turned to look at the sky and said coldly, "I'm not a saint, and neither is crazed manner. Of course, we're just protecting ourselves. However, it doesn't matter if we have you or not. However, with you, we'll have another grudge against Elite Hall. Jew, without us, even if you get the heavenly medicine, do you think you can deal with Elite Hall? You're an archaic emperor. You should understand this logic, right? What if I'm not willing?" Jing Tianju asked with a frown. "There's no free lunch in this world. Even if there is, would you feel at ease if I gave you food every day? I think that anyone with a little bit of pride wouldn't feel at ease eating it. Moreover, you're the Taigu Emperor, the Crown Prince," Yi Qinghan said calmly. Jing Tianju was stunned. Logically speaking, there was no free lunch in this world. It wouldn't be a problem if crazed manner didn't have Jing Tianju. However, without crazed manner, he wouldn't be able to kill Chu Jun even if he stood in front of him. "I understand. I'll return before the battle," Jing Tianju said as he clasped his fists. "Bring Long Xiaoyao along. The two of you can take care of each other," Yi Qinghan reminded. Whoosh! Jing Tianju's figure flashed and landed in another valley. However, the two of them left after a short while. Yi Qinghan looked at the two of them as they left. He felt helpless in his heart. He wanted to avenge Jing Tianju for free, but the crazed manner didn't have any resources. Wouldn't that be equivalent to suicide? Half of the heavenly medicine can save the lives of so many people in the crazed manner. "Don't blame me," Yi Qinghan muttered to himself. After that, he turned around and stepped forward. He took advantage of the night to arrive at the borders of his territory. The heaven-conquering camp and the ancient massacre god were already resting. However, a large number of spies were still on guard. The slightest movement would alert them. Yi Qinghan stepped past the heaven-conquering camp. He didn't stop. Instead, he headed straight for the ancestral grounds of the Yen tribe. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh, Yi Qinghan's figure flashed continuously. The journey that would have taken many years now only took a few months. Right now, the ancestral grounds of the Yen tribe were overgrown with weeds. Endless grasslands and weeds were growing from the ground. It was impossible to tell the direction of the ancestral grounds. Yi Qinghan wanted to pay respects to the Yen Emperor and the reincarnation Shakyamuni. However, he couldn't find their graves now. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.